Chapter 392. Mo Shi was waiting for the war between the werewolves and the blood breeds. At the same time, Tianlin City was filled with grief and fear. The natives knew that they would definitely suffer in the war between the werewolves and the blood breeds. This was the experience that they had gained over thousands of years. In these thousands of years, they had tried all kinds of methods. They had tried to please the blood breeds and the werewolves, fought against the blood breeds and the werewolves, and even dug underground shelters. But no matter what method they came up with, no matter if the werewolves or the blood breeds won, in the end, it was always the humans who suffered. But this time, the situation was different. Because there were still gods in the city. Of course, they also knew that they were not real gods. But those people were extremely powerful, far more powerful than the natives. So if they had any hope of escaping this time, it all depended on these people. Thinking of this, the city lord led hundreds of higher-ups of the city, representing more than 100,000 people in the city, to the residence of the gods. At this time, those people had just walked out of the house. They seemed to be a little panicked. However, when they saw the natives, their footsteps slowed down. In front of these natives, they still had to maintain the demeanor of gods. The city lord took the lead and knelt down in front of these gods. The rest of the higher-ups also knelt down devoutly. The city lord said sincerely, "Lord gods, the war between the blood breeds and the werewolves is imminent. Tianlin City will also suffer a great calamity. Please save us, Lord gods." The rest of the people followed and said in unison, "Please save us, Lord gods. Please save us, Lord gods." Hearing this, those people looked at each other. One of the young men shook his head and laughed, "You have done too many evil deeds. This is the punishment from the heavens, called heavenly tribulation. You can't hide." As he said this, he chuckled a few times, activated his hover skates, and flew out of the city. The rest of the level 10 scavengers also activated their hover skates and quickly flew out of the city. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the distant night sky. They were escaping from the Blood Wolf Star. Seeing these gods leave, the city lord and the rest of the people's hearts sank. They were going to be punished by the heavens again. They would not be able to escape this fate. The city lord turned around and spoke to the rest of the higher-ups with a pained voice. "Perhaps the gods are right. We have done too much evil. This is the punishment of the heavens." Everyone was silent. Let's talk about the 10 or so LV-10 scavenger hunters. After leaving Tianlin City, they flew to the nearest coordinates. However, they realized that there were vampires everywhere near the coordinates. They had no choice but to rush to another coordinate. However, when they arrived at the coordinates, they discovered that those coordinates were also filled with vampires. They rushed to the third coordinate. However, he discovered that the third coordinate had already been occupied by werewolves. F***CK, these guys aren't here for us, are they? Of course, he was just complaining in anger. Of course, these vampires and werewolves weren't here for them. In the eyes of the vampires and werewolves, there was no distinction between natives and outsiders. In their eyes, these were all humans. Lowly and weak humans. Now, all three coordinates were occupied and they could not leave the Blood Wolf Star. It was extremely dangerous to stay in the wilderness at night. Someone suggested, "Let's go back to Tianlin City first. When the vampires and werewolves attack Tianlin City, the coordinates will be empty. At that time, we will take the opportunity to rush back to the flame-beginning continent." The rest nodded. They had placed several wireless cameras in the distance of the three coordinates. Then, they rushed back to Tianlin City. The citizens of Tianlin City were surprised to see the sky celestials return to Tianlin City. "The gods are back. Are they here to save us? That's great. With the gods here, no matter how strong the werewolves and vampires are, they won't dare to attack Tianlin City." Those gods had returned to Tianlin City, but they did not pay attention to the natives. They went straight to their own residences and connected to the wireless cameras. They were waiting for the vampires and werewolves to start fighting. Finally, more than 100,000 werewolves and more than 1,000,000 vampires met in the wilderness. Both sides stopped at a distance of 500 meters. The Blood Clan members covered the sky and floated in the air. More than 100,000 werewolves stopped on the ground and faced each other from a distance. Then, they did not break out into a great battle as everyone had expected. Instead, they turned their heads and headed in one direction. That direction was Heaven's Descent City. When the citizens of the flame-beginning continent saw this scene through the cameras, they were all shocked. What the hell? The vampires and werewolves are natural enemies. Why aren't they fighting? Why are they all heading toward Tianlin City? The carefree young man chuckled and said, "What's there to be afraid of? Once they move, the coordinates will be empty. Let's look at the coordinates. When it's safe, we'll go over immediately." Thus, everyone switched the camera lens to the coordinates. But at this moment, everyone was dumbfounded. They saw that the first coordinate was not empty. More than 10,000 vampires were guarding it. Everyone frowned. What the hell? Let's look at the second coordinate. They switched the cameras to the second coordinate. Then, they saw more than 10,000 vampires guarding it. Then, they switched to the third coordinate. There were about 1,000 werewolves standing guard at the coordinates. Everyone was stunned when they saw this. What the hell? Are they really coming for us? The coordinates they're guarding are the coordinates we escaped from. They must be coming for us. As a result, the Flaming Continent's hunters began to panic. Damn it, we're finished. Think of a way, think of a way. What should we do? We can't beat them, and we can't escape. What should we do? Just a moment ago, these people thought they could stay out of this. But now, they realized that these vampires and werewolves were coming for them. For a moment, they were even more panicked than the natives of the city. At the same time, in the wilderness, Mosher also realized that something was wrong. What the hell are these werewolves and vampires doing? How did they get together? Puzzled, Mosher did not act rashly. Instead, he created a clone and secretly followed these people. As for his main body, he directly rushed to the third coordinate. There were more than 1,000 werewolves there, and there should be 10 spiritualists. Chapter 393. When a large number of vampires and werewolves were heading toward Tianlin City, Mosher headed toward the third coordinate. There were more than 1,000 werewolves at the third coordinate, which meant that there were at least 100 spiritualists there. A moment later, he teleported 200 kilometers away from these people. At this point, he didn't continue forward. After all, these 100 spiritualists weren't to be trifled with. If all 100 of their spiritual senses pressed down on him together, Mosher wouldn't be able to withstand it. After pondering for a moment, Mosher had an idea. He condensed 99 doppelgangers. Now, after the upgrade of the system, Mosher's doppelgangers had also increased. He could now condense 100 doppelgangers. Each of the 99 doppelgangers held a guiding device and quickly teleported forward. The werewolf spiritualists at the third coordinate didn't use their spiritual senses to check their surroundings all the time. And with so many werewolves here, there was no need for them to check their surroundings all the time. This gave Mosher's doppelgangers an opportunity. They all teleported to a place about 1,000 meters away from these werewolves. Then, they all used their guides and aimed at the werewolf spiritualists here. Soon, they had marked the 10 spiritualists here. At this moment, Mosher, who was 200 kilometers away, had already set up his sniper rifle. The moment the targets were marked, 10 targets appeared in his sniper scope. They were marked as number 1, number 2, all the way to number 99. Mosher said softly, "Target number 1." His right index finger gently pulled the trigger. Bang! There was a loud bang. The bullet left the muzzle and disappeared. The next moment, it appeared in front of a werewolf spiritualist 200 kilometers away. The spiritualist felt that something was wrong. He quickly tried to condense his telekinesis. However, bang, his upper body had already exploded into a bloody mist. At the same time, Mo.Shi's index finger continued to pull the trigger 100 times. Don't doubt Mo.Shi's hand speed. As a level 10 hunter, his hand speed was unimaginable to ordinary people. It was just a sniper rifle, but it had the firing speed of a machine gun. Bang 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 bang, 200 kilometers away, the remaining 99 spirit readers also had their heads blown off. All the werewolves were shocked to see this. Enemy. Damn it, transform. Damn it, transform. Damn it, transform. As a result, almost all of the 1,000 werewolves transformed into werewolves amidst their curses. However, after losing the psychic, these werewolves posed no threat to Mo.Shi. Mo.Shi held the mysterious Ice Devil Slayer saber and teleported to the middle of the werewolves. The mystic Ice Devil slaying saber slashed at a werewolf. Although the werewolf managed to avoid being hit in the vitals, its leg was still hit. He was secretly delighted. As long as it wasn't a vital point, the werewolf's recovery speed would heal the wound completely in a few minutes. However, just as this thought flashed through his mind, the surface of his body was rapidly frozen. At the same time, the cold air invaded his body. From the inside out, his body was quickly frozen into ice crystals. That was not all. His wound was still being corroded. Although all of this took a long time to describe, it actually happened in an instant. When the werewolf was frozen, within a few seconds, the area within 100 meters was completely frozen. All the werewolves within 100 meters were also completely frozen. Mo.Shi's draconic thought swept across. Crash! All the ice wolves within 100 meters were shattered into blood-red gems on the ground. When the rest of the werewolves saw this, they were all shocked. In their memory, humans were very fragile. Even those so-called celestial gods from other worlds could not kill them one by one. They could even kill those celestial gods. However, they had never seen someone like this human who could kill hundreds of their brothers in a single blow. In shock and anger, they all rushed toward Mo.Shi. However, this was exactly what Mo.Shi wanted. He slashed out again. Once again, the area within 100 meters was frozen. And after 2 stacks, the ice layer within 100 meters had reached more than a meter thick. With a sweep of the draconic thought, these werewolves were once again turned into broken ice. This time, the remaining werewolves finally learned their lesson. They did not dare to attack Mo.Shi again. Instead, they stayed outside the range of Mo.Shi's ice layer and thought of countermeasures. Mo.Shi did not give them a chance. With a teleport, he appeared behind another werewolf. With a slash of the blade, the area within 100 meters was once again frozen. When the remaining 500 werewolves saw this, they did not dare to stay any longer and hurriedly fled in all directions. Mo.Shi would not give them any chance. He constantly used teleportation to keep up with these werewolves. The mysterious ice devil slaying blade was constantly harvesting lives. In just 5 minutes, more than 1,000 werewolves were all killed by Mo.Shi. Not a single one was left alive. At the same time, a message appeared in his mind. Frowny face killed 100 spiritual psychics, obtained 100 strands of draconic thought. Then he looked at the numbers in his mind. Frowny face draconic thought, 1871000. After dealing with these guys, the next step was to wait and see what the blood kindred and werewolves were up to. At the same time, in Sky's Descent City, the dozen or so hunters from the Flaming Dawn continent had seen Lu Xian kill so many werewolves on his own through the surveillance cameras. And he even had the unique skill of creating clones. They were all very surprised. Is this the mysterious strong man? What a good job. He killed more than 1,000 werewolves alone. This is too crazy. Looking at his strength, he should be at least a level 3 hunter. Amidst the surprise, they were also pleasantly surprised. He killed all the werewolves at the 3rd coordinate. We can teleport over immediately. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go. Let's go. Hence, these dozen or so people once again activated their hover shoes. Under the surprised and angry gazes of the people in Sky's Descent City, they flew into the distance. The third coordinate was not far from Sky's Descent City. A moment later, they had already bypassed the blood kindred and werewolves and arrived at the third coordinate. At this time, Mo Shi was wiping his sniper rifle while thinking about how to deal with the spiritual psychics among the werewolves. As far as he was concerned, the only thing that could threaten him was those spiritual psychics. In fact, it was not difficult for him to kill these spiritual psychics. As long as he took out the sea dragon clone, he could easily kill these spiritual psychics. However, he had already asked the system before. The system's answer was, using the sea dragon clone to kill these spiritual psychics would not allow him to obtain draconic thought. This was a headache. Just as he was thinking hard about a solution, the draconic thought suddenly detected that the dozen or so people were flying over. Soon, those people also arrived at the coordinates. They looked at the ice shards all over the ground and the world within 1,000 meters that had been frozen into ice crystals. Now that they were there, they could feel Mo Shi's power even more. Chapter 394. The dozen or so level 10 hunters had heard of a mysterious powerhouse before. Now, they finally saw him in person. Mysterious powerhouse. Thank you so much. If it weren't for you, we would probably have died on the Blood Wolf Star. I will never forget your kindness for the rest of my life. These people spoke one after another. However, they didn't think so in their hearts. The reason why they had come to the Blood Wolf Star this time was because of this guy. They had returned empty-handed and almost lost their lives here. He was the one who killed almost all the vampires outside the city. If it weren't for him, they might have already succeeded in their training and become desolate hunters. However, they only thought about it in their hearts and didn't show it on their faces. At this time, they just wanted to leave this damned place and return to their sect. After returning to the sect, they would report this kid to the sect. At that time, this kid would have to bear the consequences. Mo Shi didn't intend to pay attention to these guys. However, with his caution, he naturally wouldn't let these people leave casually. He directly plundered these people's memories to check. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. Seeing these people salute him with their fists and then say goodbye to him. In Mo Shi's hand, the mysterious ice devil slaying blade appeared. However, this time, he controlled the mysterious ice devil slaying blade with his dragon thoughts. It was like a blood-red meteor, flying towards a level 10 hunter in an instant. It pierced through that person's body. That person's body was quickly frozen. At the same time, the area within 100 meters was also frozen. The bodies of the dozen or so people were all frozen into ice sculptures. Even if they were turned into ice sculptures, their eyes were still filled with disbelief. They didn't expect that this guy, who looked very ordinary on the surface, would attack without warning without even saying a word. They didn't even have time to react. In fact, even if they reacted, what could they do? Would they be able to escape if they reacted? Not to mention that they had resentment toward Mo Shi in their hearts. Even if they didn't, would Mo Shi let them go? They had already seen the strength that Mo Shi had displayed. Once they returned to the sect, they would definitely report back to the sect. Their sects knew that he was so strong and had so many strange skills. Thinking about it, it was obvious that there would be some who coveted his secrets and wanted to harm him. By the time these people were dealt with, the Blood Tribe and werewolves had already arrived at Sky Descent City. Just as all the humans in Sky's Descent City were trembling with fear, the leader of the werewolves stepped forward. It was a muscular man who looked to be in his 30s. He was wearing a sleeveless singlet, and his muscles were bulging. It was obvious that he was the strength type. Alpha Wolf Victor. He stood in front of all the werewolves and vampires and shouted to the people on the city wall, "Humans of Heaven's Descent City, you don't have to worry or be afraid. Our target this time is not you." When the people of Heaven's Descent City heard this, they all looked at each other. The vampires and werewolves stopped fighting. You don't want to fight humans anymore? If the target was not the humans of Heaven's Descent City, then who was it? Victor the Alpha continued. We have a common enemy, which is your so-called heavenly gods. They are not heavenly gods, but humans from another world. Now, you should know the truth. Victor then told them about the Flaming Dawn continent and the hunting ground. These humans were all very surprised. The people of another world actually treated the Sirius star as a huge hunting ground? And they, the humans, vampires, and werewolves, were just prey in this huge hunting ground? This sounded too unbelievable. More than half of them did not believe it. However, as long as the werewolves and vampires did not attack them, they would listen to whatever the werewolves said. Now, hand over the fake heavenly gods in your city. In the future, we, the werewolves, vampires, and humans, will be united against the enemy. When the city lord heard this, he hurriedly said they just flew away, escaped. At the same time, similar scenes were happening in the other cities of the Sirius star. All the werewolves and vampires were approaching the human cities, demanding that they hand over the fake heavenly gods. The humans could only hand over the scavengers. And the fate of these hunters was to be executed. There were thousands of cities on the Sirius star. In each city, there were at least a dozen scavengers, and at most 1,000 scavengers. In the end, more than 50,000 scavengers were killed by the werewolves. At the same time, Victor stood on the city wall. He ordered all the werewolves, vampires, and humans, now, all the fake heavenly gods are dead. There is only one fake heavenly god left on the Sirius star. Remember this face, it's him. As he spoke, a huge flag was raised beside him. On the flag, there was a person's portrait. This person was none other than Mo Shi. Alpha Wolf Victor pointed at Mo Shi's portrait and said loudly, "This fake heavenly god is much stronger than the other heavenly gods. But we have 7 million werewolves, nearly 100 million vampires, and 30 million humans in the world. If we work together, we will be invincible." The werewolves, vampires, and humans below raised their right arms and shouted in unison, "Kill the fake heavenly gods, invincible! Kill the fake heavenly gods, invincible! Kill the fake heavenly gods, invincible!" Victor the Alpha continued. "Now, let's start with one of his clones." As he spoke, his right hand pointed at Mo Shi's clone, who was disguised as a native. In the next moment, a werewolf spiritualist used his spiritual sense to envelop Mo Shi's clone and threw him high into the air. Mo Shi's clone couldn't move at all. The werewolf spiritualist controlled him and circled him. The Alpha Wolf, Victor, said loudly, "Remember this face, remember this human. Now, everyone go to the east. At the foot of Karen Mountain. He's there." As he spoke, he clenched his right fist. Bang! Mo Shi's clone in the air suddenly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. In the next moment, all the werewolves, vampires, and humans rushed to the east. At the same time, Mo Shi, who was at the foot of Karen Mountain, felt all of this through his clone. He was very surprised. This Alpha Wolf Victor actually knew so much. Although he knew from the memories of other werewolf spiritualists that this Wolf Victor wasn't simple, he didn't expect it to be so complicated. It turned out that this Wolf Victor had already advanced to become a level 2 spiritualist. After becoming a level 2 spiritualist, he awakened a talent, foresight. In other words, he could know many things in advance. That was why he knew about the flaming land and the hunting ground. That was why he knew about Mo Shi and his clone. Of course, he didn't know everything in advance. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been unaware of Mo Shi's sneak attack on the third coordinate. Chapter 395. At this moment, Mo Shi was very surprised. This Alpha Wolf actually had the ability to foresee things. This ability was really abnormal. If he hadn't met him, this guy would have been the main character. It was a pity that he had met him. In his story, he was just a small supporting character. He was just a small character who couldn't survive more than 3 chapters and had to receive a box lunch. As far as Mo Shi knew, this Victor's prophetic talent had only awakened not long ago, so it wasn't very powerful yet. For some big events and truths, he could be 100% prophetic. That was why he knew so much about the truth of the Flaming Land and the Blood Wolf Star. However, for some small events, the probability of him being able to foresee was very small. Therefore, Mosher didn't have to worry too much. These guys were all here to catch him, right? Very well, I'll wait for you here. Thinking of this, Mosher scattered his more than 100 clones and hid in all directions. He used the camouflage concealment skill to hide well. As for himself, he stayed at the foot of the mountain and set up his sniper rifle. More than 2 hours later, the first echelon of about 100,000 vampires and 7,000 werewolves had arrived. Among the 7,000 werewolves, there were more than 700 spiritualists. Mosher let his clones mark the more than 30 spiritualist werewolves gathered within a radius of 100 meters. Then, he quickly pulled the trigger. Bang 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 bang. The sniper rifle once again had the firing speed of a machine gun. There was a need to explain here. An ordinary sniper rifle, no matter how fast it was pulled, couldn't have the firing speed of a machine gun. Even the sniper rifle of the Flaming Land couldn't. However, Mosher's sniper rifle was a product of the system. Even if Mosher's hand speed was 10 times faster, it could still fire 10 times faster than a machine gun. After blowing up more than 30 spiritualist werewolves, Mosher had already teleported into the group of werewolves. Then, the mystic ice devil slaying blade in his hand instantly slashed down. Within a radius of 100 meters, everything was sealed in ice. The more than 30 spiritualist werewolves could no longer recover. At the same time, the rest of the spiritual psychics had already discovered Mosher. Their spiritual senses quickly blasted towards Mosher. Mosher hurriedly teleported 1,000 kilometers away. Just as he was about to teleport, he could feel an overwhelming pressure pressing down on him. Fortunately, in the next moment, he had already appeared 1,000 kilometers away. Whew, he heaved a sigh of relief. It was too dangerous. It was too dangerous. It seemed that he had to think of a more reliable method. But then again, to be able to obtain 30 strands of dragon wool within a second was still very satisfying. At the same time, 1,000 kilometers away. The 100,000 Blood Tribe members and the 7,000 werewolves watched the kid kill more than 200 werewolves right under their noses. They were all shocked and furious. He was shocked because that guy had killed over 200 werewolves in a single second. His strength was far beyond their imagination. He was angry because that fellow was too lawless, completely disregarding the werewolves and vampires. Especially when there were more than 700 werewolf spiritual psychics here. In shock and anger, the leader of this group of werewolves and vampires shouted loudly. All spiritual psychics, be vigilant and open your spiritual senses to the maximum. Therefore, all 700 werewolf spiritual psychics opened their spiritual senses to the maximum. At the same time, Mosher already had a countermeasure in mind. He had the 100 clones that had not yet been exposed mark more than 40 of the closest spiritual psychics. Then, he directly released the Sea Dragon clone. The Sea Dragon clone directly transformed into its combat form. Now that Mosher had been promoted to a level 10 hunter, his Sea Dragon clone had also become a level 10 mutated wild beast. Its length had reached 1,000 meters. Then, this 1,000-meter-long Sea Dragon clone teleported and appeared among the werewolves and vampires. Then, its 400-meter-long giant tail swept across. Bang 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 bang, a large group of Blood Tribe members was directly swept into meat paste. Another teleportation, and another large group of Blood Tribe members was swept into meat paste. This sudden appearance of this huge creature shocked all the vampires and werewolves. At this moment, everyone's attention was focused on the Sea Dragon clone. They attacked the Sea Dragon clone. All the spiritual psychics also attacked the Sea Dragon clone, created illusions, and even tried to control the Sea Dragon clone's consciousness. However, the Sea Dragon clone was a full 9 levels higher than them. Under the absolute suppression of levels, no amount of fancy tricks would be of any use. It was also at this moment that Mosher's consciousness returned to his main body. Then, the sniper rifle fired continuously. Bang 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 bang, more than 40 spiritual psychics were instantly blown into a bloody mist. In the next moment, Mo Shi teleported and appeared on the scene. In an instant, the surrounding 100 meters were frozen. In his mind, another system notification came: frowny face, 43 spiritual psychics killed, 43 strands of dragon consciousness obtained. Then, Mo Shi teleported again and escaped. In the end, he was pleasantly surprised to find that not many spiritual psychics had noticed him in a short period of time. So, he once again marked dozens of spiritual psychics. Doing the same, he killed more than 50. This time, the spiritual psychics finally discovered Mo Shi. However, they didn't dare to use all their dragon consciousness on Mo Shi. After all, they still had to deal with that huge creature. The sea dragon clone took the lives of countless vampires with a simple sweep of its tail. The werewolf's self-healing ability was strong, and the sweep couldn't kill them. However, Mo Shi didn't want the sea dragon clone to kill them. The sea dragon clone only needed to attract the attention of all the spiritual psychics. In fact, the sea dragon clone did far more than Mo Shi imagined. It kept wandering around these spiritual psychics, herding them together. This way, Mo Shi's clones would be able to mark more people. Mo Shi could also kill more spiritual psychics in one go. After about an hour, he finally killed all 733 spiritual psychics. At this moment, he took a look at his mind. Dragon consciousness, 9071000. As long as he killed less than 100 spiritual psychics, his dragon consciousness would level up. Next, Mo Shi didn't waste time dealing with the remaining vampires and werewolves. Instead, he left them to the sea dragon clone to deal with. As for himself, he had already commanded the 100 clones to ambush the next batch of werewolves. The second batch of werewolves was much more numerous. It reached 15,000. Among them, the number of spiritual psyche masters reached 1,500. 1,500 spiritual reader masters. This was definitely a rather shocking number. Of course, for Mo Shi, this was also quite a lot of dragon consciousness. Too many things have happened in the past month. My child is sick and hospitalized, my father is hospitalized, my mother-in-law has a fracture, and my wife has an exam. I can keep 8 of them busy by myself. As a result, he spent less time on the books. I forgot a lot of things that I wrote before. The dragon shadow step that I wrote before seems to have reached great success and can move 1,000 kilometers. But it doesn't seem like it. I flipped through some chapters but couldn't find it. I'll count it as 1,000 in the future. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, everyone. Chapter 396. Mo Shi used the blood dragon's eye to see the 1,500 spiritualists. He was secretly delighted. It seemed that the improvement of Dragon Will was not far away. Thinking of this, Mo Shi ordered the sea dragon clone to attract the attention of the werewolves and blood breeds again. He did the same thing and once again killed these spirit reader masters. Of course, these spiritualists quickly discovered Mo Shi. But so what if they discovered him? Firstly, they still needed to divert their attention to deal with the 1,000-meter-long sea dragon clone. Secondly, each time Mo Shi appeared, he would only appear for a second at most. Moreover, his position was constantly changing. One moment he was in the east, and the next moment he was in the west. It was difficult for them to truly grasp Mo Shi's true position while dealing with the sea dragon clone. Just like that, another 10 minutes passed. After killing another batch of spiritualists, a system prompt appeared in Mo Shi's mind: frowny face dragon will, 10001000. You can advance. Do you want to advance now? Mo Shi nodded. Advance. This advancement will take 5 minutes. During the advancement, you will not be able to use dragon will. The system reminded him. Mo Shi immediately entered his dragon cave. When he couldn't use dragon will, it was better to enter his dragon cave. This was safe and could cultivate dragon will. 5 minutes later, a system prompt appeared in Mo Shi's mind. Frowny face dragon will advancement successful. Mo Shi looked at his attributes. Name, Mo Shi, level 10 scavenger, level 6 Long Nian Shi, evolution direction, Titan dragon. He had finally reached level 6 Long Nian Shi. Mo Shi's dragon will spread out. He could see everything within a 300-kilometer radius. He could clearly feel that the dragon will was much stronger than before. However, he still had to test how much stronger it was through battle. After leaving the dragon cave, he teleported and once again arrived on the battlefield. This time, he didn't use a sniper rifle or the mysterious ice devil slaying blade. Instead, he teleported not far away from a level 1 spiritualist. The level 1 psychic saw Mo Shi appear and then looked at Mo Shi's sea dragon avatar, which was still far away from him. Without hesitation, he sent all of his spiritual senses towards Mo Shi. Mo Shi also sent out his draconic will. However, he did not press down on his opponent. Instead, he cautiously wrapped his entire body. When the spiritual psyche master's spiritual psyche pressed down on Mo Shi's body, the enormous dragon psyche surrounding Mo Shi didn't move at all. The Long Nian Shi was shocked when he saw this. How did this guy's spiritual senses increase so much in just 5 minutes? This was illogical. Thinking of this, he hurriedly wanted to call the other spiritual psychics. However, at this moment, Mo Shi's draconic will moved. It was a direct counter-suppression. Almost instantly, the spiritual thoughts of the spiritual psyche master were suppressed back into his body. The spiritual psychic was pressured by Mo Shi's dragon's will. His eyes were bulging, his face was red, and his blood vessels were clearly visible. The next moment. Bang! It directly exploded. This was the powerful effect of Mo Shi's draconic will leveling up. An increase in draconic will by 1 level was equivalent to an increase in Long Nian Shi by 2 levels. Therefore, Mo Shi's draconic will was equivalent to a level 2 spiritual psychic. And it was a level 2 peak spiritual psychic. Killing a mere level 1 spiritual psychic was naturally not a problem. Moreover, Mo Shi's draconic will killed the werewolf spiritual psychic at the cellular level. Therefore, he didn't even have a chance to heal himself. Phew! Mo Shi let out a long breath. Previously, these spiritual psychics were the greatest threat to him. But now, after the draconic will leveled up, the threat no longer existed. He took another look at his mind. He saw a display in his mind frowny face draconic will 11000000. In other words, the next time the draconic will leveled up, he would need to kill 100,000 werewolf spiritual psychics. It seemed like a huge number. However, after Mo Shi's draconic will leveled up, killing these werewolf spiritual psychics was not a problem at all. At this moment, hundreds of werewolves and blood breeds around Mo Shi had already discovered him. They attacked him one after another. Mo Shi's draconic will moved. Bang 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 bang, all the werewolves and blood breeds felt an incomparably huge pressure on their bodies at that moment. Then, their bodies exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Following that, Mo Shi's draconic will spread out once again. It directly attacked the 10 spiritual psychics. With his current draconic will, it was impossible for him to kill 100 spiritual psychics in one go. However, he could still carry more than 1,000 spiritual psychics and kill 10 spiritual psychics in one go. The next moment. Bang 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 bang, the bodies of the 10 spiritual psychics also exploded into a cloud of blood mist. A notification came from his mind frowny face killed 10 level 1 spiritual psychics, obtained 10 strands of draconic will, 11100000. When the other spiritual psychics saw this, they were all shocked. They, spiritual psychics, were definitely the strongest existences on the entire Blood Wolf star. But now, in front of this kid, they were like paper. Thinking of this, all the more than 1,000 spiritual psychics used their spiritual psychics to communicate. Let's go together. With the spiritual psychics of more than 1,000 of us, I don't believe that we can't crush him to death. 3, 2, 1, go. Thus, the spiritual psychics of more than 1,000 people joined forces to form a huge mountain and press down on immersive. However, under the pressure of more than 1,000 people's spiritual psychics, immersiv's draconic will only paused slightly. In the next moment, he used his draconic will to protect himself while pressing down on the 10 spiritual psychics. Bang 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 bang, simple and crude. The 10 spiritual psychics and werewolves exploded into a cloud of blood mist again. In his mind, the system notification came again. Frowny face killed 10 level 1 spiritual psychics, obtained 10 strands of draconic will, 211000000, with the strength of one person. He was able to withstand more than 1,000 spiritual psychics and kill the 10 spiritual psychics on the spot. All the spiritual psyche masters present were aghast. This fellow's spiritual psychics were too strong. Just as they were shocked, immersiv's draconic will had already attacked once again. Bang 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 bang, another 10 spiritual psychics were killed by him. Killed 10 level 1 spiritual psychics, obtained 10 strands of draconic will, 311000000. After killing 50 spiritual psychics in a row, the remaining spiritual psychics all panicked. He's too strong. Don't act rashly. Retreat a certain distance first and wait for reinforcements. A werewolf roared. The other werewolves and blood breeds also retreated, including those spiritual psychics. However, it was better if they didn't return. Once they retreated, their psychic power wouldn't be so uniform. Taking advantage of this opportunity, immersive quickly used his telekinesis to suppress the 100 spiritual readers. Bang 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 bang, the 100 spiritual psychics also instantly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Killed 100 level 1 spiritual psychics, obtained 100 strands of draconic will, 151100000. In a second, 100 strands of draconic will entered his account. This really made immersive feel good in his heart. As a result, those spiritual psychics were even more chaotic. This way, it was even more convenient for immersive. The draconic will pressed over again. Bang 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 bang, minus 100 spiritual psychics exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Killed 100 level 1 spiritual psychics, obtained 100 strands of draconic will, 251100000. Chapter 397. When those werewolf spiritualists worked together, it wouldn't be so easy for immersive to kill them. He could only kill 10 at a time. And when they were in a mess, it was much easier for immersive to kill them. He could easily kill 100 of them. As for the other werewolves and vampires, they were terrified when they saw the strongest spiritualists among them exploding into a bloody mist. With the sea dragon clone around, they could only turn around and run away quickly. With a thought, immersive ordered his sea dragon doppelganger to kill them all. Now, immersive planned to raise his dragon will to level 7 as soon as possible. That way, he would be safer when facing these level 1 spiritualists. Therefore, he didn't have the time to deal with these ordinary werewolves and vampires. The sea dragon clone didn't hold back either. It opened its mouth and swallowed more than 50 werewolves. Immersive focused all his energy on dealing with these spiritualists. Each time, he could kill 100 spiritualists. The numbers in his mind were also constantly jumping. Dragon will, 351100000. Dragon will, 451100000. Dragon will, 551100000. In the end, after killing this wave of spiritualists, his dragon will stopped at a number. Frowny face dragon will, 555100000. Immersive didn't pay any more attention to the remaining werewolves and vampires. He let the sea dragon clone destroy them all. At this moment, within a 5-kilometer radius, there was a layer of blood mist. Even the blood moon in the sky couldn't penetrate this layer of blood mist. Then, under his investigation, the third and fourth waves of attacks had arrived. These two waves combined, there were 13,000 spiritualists among them. Mo Shi's heart was bursting with joy. He wasn't afraid that there were too many spiritualists, but he was afraid that there weren't enough of them. He was still the same as before, lying in ambush in place, waiting for this large wave of vampires and zombies to arrive. These werewolves and vampires smelled the thick blood mist here. They also smelled the scent of werewolves and vampires. They quickly raised their vigilance. However, it was already too late. Bang 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 bang, without any warning, the bodies of the 100 spiritualists suddenly exploded into 100 clouds of blood mist. At this moment, the rest of the werewolves and vampires finally understood where the blood mist came from. Alert! Be careful! However, their vigilance came a little too late. Bang 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 bang, another 100 spiritual readers suddenly exploded into a bloody mist. Only then did the remaining 1,100 or so spiritual readers react. One by one, they condensed their spiritual senses and scanned the surroundings. Soon, they discovered Mo Shi. Their spiritual senses pressed down on Mo Shi one after another. Instantly, an enormous pressure caused Mo Shi's dragon will to shrink rapidly. It wasn't that Mo Shi's draconic will wasn't strong enough, but that there were simply too many of them. The spiritual senses of 11,000 psychic trainers were no joke. However, it only reduced Mo Shi's spiritual sense fandom from 300 kilometers to 50 kilometers. It wouldn't be of any help to their current battle situation. In addition, at this moment, a huge creature that was 1,000 meters long suddenly appeared on the battlefield. With a sweep of its tail, it wiped out hundreds of vampires. This caused the scene to instantly become chaotic. Those spiritual readers also focused more of their attention on the huge creature that had suddenly appeared. After all, in their perception, this huge creature was much, much more dangerous than this human. And when their attention was on the sea dragon clone, Mo Shi's draconic will had already been activated again. 10, 10, 10, he continued to kill these spirit reader masters. In the beginning, these spiritual psyche masters relied on their numbers to constantly counterattack Mo Shi. But as time passed, they realized that they couldn't stop this spiritual reader at all. Moreover, their companions kept exploding one after another. This made every one of them tremble in fear. No one knew if they would be the next one. Just like that, Mo Shi killed more than 200 spiritual readers one by one. The other spiritual readers finally panicked. They couldn't stop this powerful spiritual reader at all. And this spiritual reader's target was very obvious. It was all the spiritual readers present. If they didn't escape, they would definitely die at the hands of this spiritual reader. Therefore, their only way out was to escape. And when they escaped, things would be even easier. Mo Shi's draconic will quickly spread out. Bang 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 bang, minus 100 spiritual readers instantly exploded into a bloody mist. As a result, these spiritual psyche masters were frightened. Just now, it was 10 by 10. This time, hundreds of them exploded. Then, no one knew if 1,000 would explode next. With this thought in mind, these spirit reader masters became even more flustered. They hurriedly scattered in all directions. Bang 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 bang, the more panicked they were, the faster they exploded. In addition, the sea dragon clone was constantly disturbing their minds. It could be said that Mo Shi had no difficulty in killing them now. After spending about 2 hours, Mo Shi had killed all of the 10,000 plus spiritual readers here. His draconic will had also reached 15,000. At the same time, in Tianlin City, Alpha Wolf Victor had also seen that several waves of werewolves had been killed by Mo Shi. His heart was filled with shock and anger. He thought that with so many werewolves and blood breeds, it wouldn't take much effort to capture a human. But he didn't expect that the werewolves would lose more than 100,000 werewolves and more than 16,000 werewolf spiritual readers. This human was actually so powerful. And that terrifying monster, with a sweep of its tail, hundreds of blood breeds died. Its huge mouth could swallow dozens of werewolves. Facing such a combination, the werewolves and blood breeds' advantage in numbers didn't have any effect at all. Preposterous. Preposterous. In his anger, he began to use his prophetic ability. Soon, an image appeared in his mind. At first, the image was just very blurry. But gradually, the image became clearer. He saw millions of blood breeds and millions of werewolves. So many blood breeds and werewolves surrounded that human in the center. There was no way out for him. In the end, his body swayed a few times and slowly fell to the ground. Seeing this, Wolf Victor couldn't help but feel happy. This image was enough. According to his many previous experiences, no matter how the process developed, the result was often the image he saw. In other words, this kid's ending was destined. Therefore, he immediately ordered, all blood breeds and werewolves, rush to the target location at full speed. Kill that human if you don't know the price. The Blood Wolf planet's communication was relatively backward. But even so, within 5 hours, his order had already spread throughout the Blood Wolf planet. All werewolves, blood breeds, and humans received the same order: kill that human at all costs. Chapter 398. No one would have thought of it. At this moment, the entire Blood Wolf star was carrying out a siege. Tens of millions of vampires and millions of werewolves were rushing to the same target location, intending to surround and kill the target. And this target was only a human. Of course, if they had to calculate more, their target was also that 1,000-meter-long monster. However, they were rushing to the target location, which was basically sending dragon thoughts to Mo. Of course, as the number of werewolves and vampires increased, Mo also had to change his strategy. He no longer rushed in and attacked with dragon thoughts. Instead, after killing 10 spirit readers, he teleported away. He went to another corner of the battlefield, teleported again, killed 10 people, and escaped again. This cycle repeated. As for those spirit readers, they couldn't figure out his location at all. In this way, it didn't seem like these people were going to surround and kill him. Instead, it seemed like they were being hunted by him alone. Of course, that Wolf Victor also knew about this situation. But at this moment, he no longer thought about anything else. The image in his mind had already become the basis for all his decisions and judgments. He didn't care about the process. As long as the final result was enough. Thus, during this process, Mo's dragon thoughts continued to increase. According to Earth's time, more than 10 days had passed. And in these 10 days, Mo didn't stop for a moment. He continued to kill these spirit reader masters. The entire battlefield, with a radius of more than 100 kilometers, had long been enveloped by a thick blood fog. In the blood fog, the visibility was less than 10 meters. Moreover, the range of the blood fog was still expanding. And in these 10 days, Mo was killing werewolf spirit readers almost every minute. The continuous killing made the killing intent on his body become stronger and stronger. Finally, on the 10th day, this killing intent actually formed a substance around his body. This murderous aura was like a blood mist, lingering around him within 100 meters. And as long as he willed, this blood fog would instantly turn into thousands of blood-red sharp blades, mincing any creature within 100 meters into meat paste. Mo's pupils also changed from the initial black to dark red, bright red, and blood red because of the continuous killing. At this moment, he no longer had any other thoughts in his mind. There was only one thought in his mind: kill. At this point, he no longer cared about the blood breed, the werewolf, or the werewolf's psychic master. In short, as long as it was something that his eyes could see and his dragon consciousness could detect, it would be his target. He wanted to kill them. He only wanted to kill. With such thoughts in mind, his mind was no longer as clear as before. At this moment, killing intent surged from his body. Behind him, a pair of blood-red wings spread out. His eyes were so red that they looked like they could bleed. He was like a demon king of slaughter. He did not know how long he had been killing for. He had no idea how many he had killed. Amidst this frenzied slaughter, A notification suddenly sounded in his mind. Dragonville has reached 100,000. You can advance. This reminder woke him up abruptly. He went straight into his dragon cave. The redness in his eyes slowly receded. The murderous aura on his body also slowly receded. He sat cross-legged in the dragon cave. He kept taking deep breaths. After more than 2 hours, his eyes finally regained their clarity. The murderous aura on his body had also been completely withdrawn. Only then did he speak in his mind. Advance. This advancement will take 5 minutes. Dragonville cannot be used during advancement. With the system's notification, the advancement began. During the advancement, Mo recalled the state just now and felt a lingering fear. Even he was afraid of that state just now. He was on the verge of going berserk. If he continued to develop, he would definitely go berserk. At that time, he would probably become a demon king who only knew how to kill. It seemed that he had to be more careful in the future. Thinking about it, after the Dragonville advanced again, he would have more control over his heart. At that time, it should not be so easy for him to go berserk again. A moment later, another notification sounded in his mind. Advancement successful. Name, Mo Level 10 Scavenger, Level 7 Long Nian Shi, Evolution Direction, Titan Dragon. He had finally advanced. There was no need to kill on such a large scale anymore. This made Mo heave a sigh of relief. However, he did not go out immediately. Instead, he planned to wait. He would go out after his state of mind had completely calmed down. At the same time, in the outside world, the millions of Blood Clan members and millions of werewolves were all very strange after Mo suddenly disappeared. At first, they were all on high alert, worried that the kid would suddenly appear and attack them again. However, after a few hours, there was no movement at all. Did the kid suddenly disappear just like that? Hence, they started a carpet search around the area. In the end, at Assembly Point 3, they developed a clone of Mo. Of course, they did not know that this was only Mo's clone. They only knew that since their leader had asked them to kill this kid at all costs, they would do as they were told. However, this kid was really powerful, so they were very careful at first. However, after a few minutes, they realized that for some reason, this kid did not seem as scary as before. Only then did they swarm forward and cut down Mo's clone. In Sky's Descent City, when the Alpha Wolf Victor saw this scene, he was instantly overjoyed. Sure enough, it was exactly the same as the scene in his mind. This kid was finally dead. He let out a long breath. He had always felt that he was the most powerful being on this planet. However, the terrifying degree of that kid just now made him feel that in front of this kid, he was afraid that he was not his opponent at all. Now that this kid was dead, everything was resolved. Then, the next step was to plan how to kill his way to the Flaming Land. Thinking of this, he began to gather the upper echelons of the werewolves, Blood Clan, and humans to discuss this matter together. 5 hours later. On the previous battlefield, amidst the thick blood mist, Yizichen looked at Yizichen. A figure quietly appeared. This person was none other than Mo. His Dragonsville had reached level 7, so his consciousness was quite clear. Although there was a thick blood fog around him, his consciousness did not waver at all. Mo. was secretly delighted. It seemed that he would not go crazy again. Using his Dragonsville to investigate, he found that most of the Blood Clan and werewolves had already dispersed. However, within a radius of 350 kilometers, there were still dozens of small groups of Blood Clan and werewolves. Then, the next step was to collect the Titan Dragon's blood and work hard to become a desolate hunter. At the same time, in Sky's Descent City, the Alpha Wolf Victor was discussing with the upper echelons of the Blood Clan and werewolves on how to go to the Flaming Land. However, at this moment, an image suddenly appeared in his mind. Chapter 399. Usually, if the Alpha Wolf Victor didn't actively foresee the future, he wouldn't be able to see the future in his mind. But this time, when he was discussing something with the others, a scene suddenly appeared in his mind. The scene was somewhat blurry. It was like a mosaic of water monsters, flying saucers, and savages in any video. In the scene was a city. In this city, there were tens of thousands of human figures. It was just that it couldn't be seen clearly whether this figure was a vampire, a werewolf, or a human. At this moment, in the distant sky, a huge figure flew over. That huge figure was actually more than 100 meters long. Its body was more than 100 meters long, and it had huge wings that were nearly 100 meters wide. It glided toward the city. The people in the city continuously attacked this huge figure. However, no matter if it was arrows, spears, or rocks, they couldn't cause any damage to this huge figure. When this huge figure flew over the city, it suddenly spat out a flame. The city instantly turned into a sea of fire. In the sea of fire, the creatures in the city roared, wailed, and rolled about. Just a flame was enough to turn the city into a purgatory. Then, that figure flapped its wings and flew into the sky again, swaggering away. Seeing this scene, the alpha wolf Victor couldn't help but tremble. Although the scene was mosaic and he couldn't see clearly what that huge black figure was. But from the bottom of his heart, he could feel how powerful that creature was. In front of that creature, even he felt that he was so small. Victor looked at the city outside the window and said to the werewolves and human higher-ups, "Retreat. Retreat. Everyone, retreat from Tianlin City." Those humans and vampires didn't know how powerful Victor's prophetic ability was. But all the werewolves knew how powerful their leader's prophetic ability was. In the past, their leader's every decision was absolutely correct. Therefore, they didn't have any doubts. They immediately got up and walked out, beginning to issue orders to the rest of the werewolves to retreat from the city. Seeing that almost all the werewolves had begun to retreat, the vampires hesitated for a few minutes and also began to give the order to retreat. As for those humans, the werewolves and vampires wouldn't care. Humans were too weak to be of much help in battle. Therefore, they didn't care whether humans lived or died. Within a short hour, the werewolves and vampires had all retreated from Skyfall City. The entire Sky's Descent City had returned to the hands of the humans in this short period of time. All the humans were dumbfounded. These werewolves and vampires had suddenly come and gone. Humans, on the other hand, knew nothing about it. Meanwhile, in the wilderness, Wuxia was looking for a target. Although his fists were powerful, the werewolf's self-healing ability was too strong. His fists could not kill it. Therefore, he only had one target, the blood breeds. Moments later, his draconic will detected the locations of over 1,000 blood breeds. Then, with a thought, he teleported into the midst of the blood descendants. The vampires were resting on the spot. Seeing Wuxia's sudden appearance, everyone was taken aback. After all, the battle prowess Wuxia had displayed earlier was simply too fearsome. Even the spiritualists among the werewolves had been hunted down by this fellow. Wouldn't it be a matter of minutes for the bloodlings like them? In fact, they did want to fight. After Wuxia appeared, he threw a punch at a level 10 evolved vampire. Bang! That level 10 evolved vampire was unable to resist at all. His brain exploded into a bloody mist. Then Wuxia started punching and kicking. With every punch, he could blow up 1 or even 2 or 3 vampires' heads. If he was lucky, he could blow up 4 or 5 vampires' heads with a kick. Seeing this, the surrounding vampires swarmed forward, wanting to kill Wuxia. However, when they swarmed over, Wuxia only needed to slightly suppress them with his draconic will. Most of the vampires couldn't even move. Only a small group of vampires that Wuxia had purposely left behind could move. However, these vampires couldn't move at all when they saw their companions. They were terrified and hurriedly turned to escape. But where could they escape to? Although they were fast, they were nothing in front of Wuxia's draconic will. They were easily killed by Wuxia's punches. After killing this small group of vampires, Mo Shi's draconic will let go of another small group of vampires. This group of vampires had some guts. They didn't run away. Instead, they took out all of their special skills and attacked Mo Shi. However, as long as Mo Shi teleported away, all of their moves would fall through. Under Mo Shi's violent suppression, this small group of vampires was all killed by Mo Shi in less than half a minute. Then, batch after batch of vampires were killed by Mo Shi. When the vampires in the distance saw Mo Shi's violence, they wanted to escape. However, under the pressure of Mo Shi's dragon sense, they felt as if they were being pressed down by 1,000 kilograms, unable to move. The werewolves who were resting nearby rushed over when they heard the news. When they saw Mo Shi slaughtering tens of thousands of werewolves on his own, they couldn't help but feel a little surprised. This human strength was terrifying. Although most of the werewolf spiritualists had been killed by Mo Shi, there were still some who escaped. At this moment, a werewolf spiritualist saw Mo Shi's violence and immediately spread out his draconic will. "Lowly human, how dare you be so arrogant? Die!" In the blink of an eye, he sent his spiritual will towards Mo Shi. However, his action was noticed by Mo Shi. In the next moment, Mo Shi's enormous draconic will pressed down on his draconic will. The werewolf spiritualist felt Mo Shi's enormous telekinesis and was shocked. His draconic will was on a completely different level from this guy's telekinesis. This guy's telekinesis could almost crush him. He quickly retracted his draconic will to protect himself. However, in the next moment, bang, his body exploded into a bloody mist under Mo Shi's draconic will. His draconic will was only at level 1. Mo Shi's level 7 draconic will was equivalent to a level 4 spiritualist. Moreover, the quality of Mo Shi's draconic will was much better than that of a level 4 spiritualist. Even a level 4 spiritualist was nothing in front of Mo Shi. Moreover, this was only a level 1 spiritualist. After killing this level 1 spiritualist, Mo Shi continued to kill the vampires. As he continued to kill, he didn't dare to hear the system's notification in his mind. Killed a level 10 evolved blood breed. Obtained 10 drops of Titan dragon blood. Killed a level 10 evolved blood breed. Obtained 10 drops of Titan dragon blood. Chapter 400. Mo Shi spent more than half an hour to kill all the vampires here. Then, he flew toward another group of vampires. Another half an hour later, he slaughtered all the vampires. Just like that, Mo Shi slaughtered batch after batch of vampires. And these vampires couldn't do anything in front of the powerful Mo Shi. Their advantage in numbers was useless in front of Mo Shi. All the vampires within a few kilometers couldn't move at all under the suppression of the dragon will. After Mo Shi killed the dozen or so vampires, he continued to kill the other dozen or so vampires. Just like that, time passed minute by minute, second by second, and Mo Shi killed more and more werewolves. The amount of Titan dragon blood he consumed was also increasing. News of his strength and terror had spread throughout the entire Blood Wolf Star. That guy isn't human at all. He's too strong. Neither the werewolves nor the vampires can stop him. Why does he only kill vampires and not werewolves? Not really. He also kills werewolves. It's just that he only kills the spiritualists among the werewolves. This guy is a complete demon. The leader of the vampires had sent several groups of vampires to surround that guy. Last time, that guy had the help of that huge monster, so they couldn't do anything to him. This time, for some reason, that huge monster didn't appear. So, they thought that they could kill that guy with their advantage in numbers. However, reality proved that the leader of the vampires was wrong. That guy was really powerful. Just his telekinesis was enough to suppress the vampires around him. And he only released a few dozen vampires each time. Those vampires were no match for him at all and could only be killed instantly. Just like that, several waves of blood race encirclement ended in failure. The leader of the vampires had no choice but to look for the werewolf leader, Victor. Mr. Victor, the guy we were hunting before has appeared again. Victor frowned when he heard that. You still have that huge monster with you? The leader of the vampires shook his head. This time, for some reason, that huge monster didn't appear. But his strength seems to have increased. We sent over 100,000 vampires to encircle him. However, it was suppressed by his powerful telekinesis and could not move at all. In the end, the 200,000 vampires were all killed by him, one punch after another. Alpha Wolf Victor frowned when he heard that. His telekinesis is that strong? The leader of the kindred said, I'm here to ask Mr. Victor for help in dealing with that human. Alpha Wolf Victor pondered for a moment and shook his head. If he's really as strong as you say, then even we, the werewolves, can't do anything. The leader of the kindred laughed bitterly. I heard that there is a group of level 2 spiritualists hidden among the werewolves. If you are willing to let them fight, we will also send out all the level 10 psychic masters. If we work together, we should be able to subdue that kid. Victor stared at the vampire leader. You vampires are investigating us werewolves? The vampire leader said with a smile, likewise. You werewolves have also been investigating us vampires. Alpha Wolf Victor laughed and did not dwell on this issue. The vampire leader continued speaking. Mr. Victor said that we should let go of our past grudges and work together against the enemy. That human is too strong. We must work together with the werewolves. Otherwise, if he really destroys the entire vampire race, who knows if his next target will be the werewolves. Victor, the werewolf leader, was silent for a moment and nodded. What you said is not without reason. That guy is an outsider. Naturally, we have to work together to deal with him. We will do as you said. We will send out our spiritualists and you will send out all your telekinesis. We must destroy that kid. Therefore, Victor sent out 500 of his spiritualists. The vampires sent out almost all of their level 10 psychokinesis. Although the probability of the vampires producing a psychic master was very low, they had a large population. Therefore, the total number of psychic masters reached 50,000. Then, these 500 spiritualists and 50,000 level 10 psychic masters rushed toward Immersive's location. However, as they were rushing to the battlefield, a figure suddenly appeared in front of them. This figure was none other than the werewolf leader, Victor. When the 500 werewolf spiritualists saw Victor, they naturally half-knelt and saluted him. When the 50,000 vampires saw the werewolf saluting, they hesitated for a moment and saluted as well. After all, they were working together now. If they did not salute the werewolf leader, there might be some hostility between them. Just as they lowered their heads to salute the werewolf leader, an enormous spiritual will suddenly enveloped all of the vampire psychic grandmasters. How could these vampire psychic masters be a match for the werewolf leader? Furthermore, they were caught off guard. They only felt that their psychokinesis was being sucked in by a huge force, and they couldn't help but be drawn toward the werewolf leader. Even if they used all of their methods, they could not stop their psychic powers from flowing away. They all turned pale with fright. Mr. Victor, what do you mean by this? Victor sneered. You vampires should not exist in this world. Take this opportunity to destroy all of the most powerful psychic masters in the vampire race. This is the right way. No, Mr. Victor. If we vampires are destroyed, you werewolves will not have it easy either. Victor sneered again. You don't have to worry about that. As he spoke, he increased the absorption rate. The psychic powers of all 50,000 level 10 psychic masters were absorbed by Victor. At this moment, his spiritual sense had finally increased by 1 level. He had reached level 3 psychic. Although the hunting ground master of the 10th hunting ground had limited the levels of the werewolves and vampires in this hunting ground, it had only limited their physical growth. However, it did not limit the growth of their psychic powers. This was because according to their previous experience, with the environment of the Blood Wolf planet, the probability of producing a psychic master was very small. Even if they did produce a psychic reader, a level 1 psychic reader would be their limit. Therefore, there was no need to spend so much effort to limit them. However, they never expected that a peerless genius would appear on the Blood Wolf planet. Victor. With his talent, he had raised his spiritual sense to level 2. After so many years, he had reached the peak of level 2. However, no matter how strong his talent was, the environment of this planet was like this. He could not raise his spiritual sense by even half a step. Therefore, he came up with this idea to absorb the psychic powers of all the level 10 psychic masters of the vampire race to help him become a level 3 psychic. Chapter 401. Although the leader of the blood race had always been wary of Victor, he would never have dreamed that Victor would suddenly stab him in the back in the face of a strong enemy. Even Victor's subordinates, the 500 or so level 2 spiritualists, did not think of this. Victor had now advanced to level 3 spiritualist. He looked at the 500 confused werewolves in front of him. He said loudly, "You don't have to be surprised. If we werewolves want to break through this hunting ground and go to the real flaming continent, we have to keep improving ourselves. However, this is not enough. Even if I take you to the flaming dawn continent, where there are as many experts as there are clouds, we will still be stones under their feet, stones that they can step on whenever they want. We will be meat on their chopping board. They will cut us if they want to. Therefore, we need to use all means to become even more powerful." The 500 level 2 werewolf spiritualists understood their leader's good intentions. They raised their right arms and said in unison, "Leader is wise." Victor nodded, then raised his head, stretched his arms, and said passionately, "Now, tell me loudly. Do you want to be prey in the hunting ground and be hunted by the people of the flaming continent, or do you want to be hunters and hunt the people of the flaming continent?" Hunters. 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 All the werewolves shouted in unison. Victor continued to speak loudly, "Do you want to trample the lowly humans of the flaming continent under your feet? Do you want to turn them around and treat them as prey?" Yes. 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 All the werewolves' emotions were stirred up. Victor raised his arms. "If you want to follow me to the flaming continent and be hunters there, then, now is the time to start." Before he finished speaking, his powerful spiritual thoughts suddenly enveloped all the werewolves. In the next moment, his spiritual thought began to extract the spiritual thoughts of the werewolves. All the werewolves were shocked. By the time they realized what Victor was thinking, it was already too late. In that instant, a third of their spiritual senses had been extracted by Victor. Their spiritual thought decreased, while Victor's spiritual thought increased. Under such circumstances, there was not much they could do even if they wanted to resist. Moreover, they were controlled by Victor's spiritual thought. They could not escape even if they wanted to. "Leader, why are you doing this?" "Leader, we have always been loyal to you. Why are you doing this to us?" "Chief, didn't we agree to go to the Flaming Dawn continent together?" There was a sinister smile on Victor's face. He said, "Give me your spiritual sense, and you will be with me forever. Wherever I go, all of you will go as well." Before he finished speaking, he stopped explaining. He increased the strength of the extraction. In an instant, the spiritual thoughts of all 500 werewolves entered Victor's body. At the same time, Victor's spiritual sense had advanced once again, reaching level 4. Victor spread out his spiritual senses. Sensing that everything within a radius of several hundred kilometers was under his control, he couldn't help but look up at the sky and howl at the moon. Roar! All living beings within a radius of several hundred kilometers trembled under his long howl. This was the suppression of the laws of nature. On this planet, he was the absolute king. One of a kind. In fact, Victor had never thought about attacking the people of the flaming continent from the very beginning. He didn't even think about attacking Immersive. This was because he had already seen how strong Immersive's mutated dire beast was. Even if he was 10 times or 100 times stronger, he wouldn't be able to fight against that mutated dire beast. Therefore, he only took this opportunity to gather all the level 10 grand psychics of the blood race. He absorbed all of their psychic power. At the same time, he also took this opportunity to gather all the level 2 grand psychics of the werewolves for him to absorb. Now, his spiritual sense level had reached level 4. Only when his strength reached this level would he have a certain degree of confidence to travel on the Flaming Dawn continent. In other words, everything he had done before was so that he could leave this planet. He would go to the Flaming Dawn continent himself. From the moment he knew that Immersive had appeared, he had never treated Immersive as an enemy. Now, if necessary, he could even treat Immersive as a partner. At the same time, he also had a premonition that the huge black shadow he saw must be related to this guy. After thinking about it, he turned his head and walked in the direction of Immersive. At this moment, Immersive didn't know about all of this. He was still killing non-stop. This time, he felt that he was controlling it very well. Although he was killing non-stop, he was always guarding his heart. And every few hours, he would stop to take a breath. First, he had time to devour the Titan dragon's blood that he had just obtained. Second, he also calmed his state of mind so that he wouldn't be so violent. However, what he didn't know was that his eyes had started to turn red again. And the murderous aura on his body was slowly seeping out of his body. After killing for more than 2 hours, Immersive's eyes had become even redder. At this moment, he no longer thought about anything and just guarded his heart. He also stopped thinking about anything and paused to calm his state of mind. Unknowingly, he had already fallen into the same state of killing from before. There was only one thing he wanted to do: kill. In his mind, there was only one word left: kill. He wanted to kill until the sky turned dark. He wanted to kill until the sun and moon lost their light. He wanted to destroy this world. More than 2 hours later, Victor, who was rushing to Immersive's location. His spiritual senses had already detected Immersive. It was also at this moment that an image appeared in his mind. In the image, a long saber in Immersive's hand chopped down on his head. His body was instantly sealed in ice. In the next moment, it shattered into blood-red ice shards on the ground. Seeing this scene, Victor's body couldn't help but tremble. He subconsciously stopped in his tracks and looked in the direction of Immersive. He didn't dare to use his spiritual senses to investigate again. Instead, he turned around and ran in another direction. In his perception, that guy was in a fit of anger at this moment. Whoever went up to provoke him would be unlucky. Even if he didn't have any ill intentions, he would probably run straight into the muzzle of the gun if he went over. Therefore, the plan now was to stay far away from that guy first. In fact, with Immersive's dragon senses, he had already discovered Victor when Victor was investigating him. But now, there was only killing in his eyes. There were so many vampires in front of him, but he didn't want to go so far to kill a werewolf. He naturally wouldn't do such a thing. As time passed, the murderous aura around him became stronger and stronger. His eyes once again became as red as blood. There was only one thing he wanted to do now: kill. Chapter 402. As time went by, Immersive's eyes grew redder and redder. The murderous aura around him grew thicker and thicker. At the same time, he was devouring more and more Titan dragon blood. He was getting closer and closer to a breakthrough. After a long time, the moon gradually set in the west. The sun rose in the east. According to the time on the Flaming Land, Immersive had been here for 2 months. According to the rules of the 10th hunting ground, the 500,000 yuan ticket could only stay here for 2 months. For every extra day he stayed here, he would be charged 10 times the price when he went back. Therefore, many people would return to Hunting Island number 10 if they needed to stay here for 2 months. They would purchase a new ticket before coming back. After all, the 10th hunting island wouldn't let you stay here indefinitely for 500,000 yuan. However, Immersive didn't have these thoughts at this time. There was only one thought in his mind: kill. Naturally, he didn't go back. When the sun rose, on the 10th hunting island of the Flaming Land, the computers had already reported the people who hadn't returned yet. Among these people were those who died on the Blood Wolf Star. After careful investigation, they found that Mo Shi was the only one who was still alive among these people. Therefore, they quickly reported this to the teleportation hall. As long as Mo Shi teleported back, they would contact Mo Shi immediately and charge him a high fee. At this moment, more and more vampires and werewolves had gathered around Mo Shi, unaware of what had happened. Mo Shi didn't summon the Azure Dragon avatar and didn't use any energy. No matter how violent he was, he could only kill 4 or 5 people with one punch at most. It was far less visually impactful than killing dozens of spiritualists in an instant. Therefore, those vampires and werewolves thought that no matter how strong this guy was, he would run out of energy one day. They had millions of werewolves and vampires, and with their advantage in numbers, they would eventually kill this kid. However, in fact, Mo Shi kept drinking the Titan dragon blood, and his body was constantly being modified by it. Therefore, the power he possessed was far beyond the imagination of these werewolves and vampires. It was no exaggeration to say that Mo Shi could kill forever if he wanted to. Finally, with the passage of time, the sun set and the moon rose. The moon set again and the sun rose again. According to the Flame Origin Continent's time, Mo Shi had been here for 4 months and 5 days. At this moment, Mo Shi had gone completely berserk. His entire body was shrouded in killing intent. His eyes were so red that they looked like they could bleed. The blood wings on his back were so red that they looked like they could drip blood. Even the werewolves and vampires felt fear just by looking at Mo Shi. They had surrounded this guy for 2 nights and 1 day, but this guy didn't seem to be exhausted at all. He didn't look like a human at all, nor did he look like a vampire, nor did he look like a werewolf. Instead, he was a demon. A demon that only knew how to kill. The werewolves and vampires had exhausted almost all of their methods. But he couldn't kill this kid at all. This kid was like an undying demon god. After fighting for so long, the vampires and werewolves were already thinking of retreating. However, at this moment, they were in a difficult position. Did they think they could stop fighting just because they wanted to? Would this guy let them go? Moreover, they had already paid such a huge price and lost so many of their compatriots. If they gave up now, wouldn't their compatriots have died in vain? Therefore, they could only continue to besiege him. At the same time, they were constantly thinking of a way. At the same time, Mo Shi was constantly killing and devouring the dragon's blood. His body had already touched that limit. And it was different from before. In the past, Mo Shi would stagnate when he reached the limit of level 10. He needed an opportunity to evolve. But this time, when Mo Shi touched this limit, his body began to heat up. And it was even hotter than before. He was going to evolve directly. There was no need for an opportunity at all. In other words, his current frenzied slaughter was an opportunity for him to evolve. However, even so, he still didn't stop killing. Because at this moment, there was only one thought in his mind: kill. His body was extremely hot, but he didn't care. His blood was as hot as magma, but he didn't care. He only wanted to kill. After another 20 hours, at a certain moment, his body suddenly changed. The surface of his body began to be covered with a layer of black scales. His legs and arms turned into thick and powerful claws. On his body, on his back, the pair of blood dragon wings began to turn from red to black. However, they slowly condensed from illusory into substance. They formed a pair of black, wide wings. On the wings, a pair of extremely sharp claws shone with a chilling light under the sunlight. His head had changed as well. His face was also covered with black scales. Sharp thorns grew out of his head. He no longer looked like a human, but the head of a monster. A pair of eyes were as red as blood. Behind him, a tail full of sharp thorns grew out. As the shape of his entire body changed, his body was also changing. His body began to rapidly grow larger and longer. 10 meters, 20 meters, 40 meters, 60 meters. Finally, it stopped at 100 meters. At this moment, he had already transformed into a 100-meter-long dragon. Finally, Mo-Shi had evolved into a giant dragon. At the same time, a system prompt appeared in his mind: frowny face, evolution successful. The system's voice finally made Mo-Shi, who had been unconscious for a long time, regain some rationality. For the first time in more than 3 months, he communicated with the system in his mind. Check level. Name, Mo-Shi, race, human, bloodthirsty demon dragon, level 1 bloodthirsty demon dragon, level 1 desolate hunter, level 7 long Nian Shi, evolution path, ancient demon dragon. When Mo-Shi saw this, he frowned. His consciousness also became a little clearer. Didn't you say that I was going to evolve into a titan dragon? The system's voice replied, frowny face. During the evolution process, due to the host's continuous killing, his body was surrounded by killing intent, and his body mutated, so he evolved into a bloodthirsty demon dragon. What's the difference between a bloodthirsty demon dragon and a titan dragon? The dragon race is also divided into levels. A titan dragon is the lowest level existence among the dragon race. A bloodthirsty demon dragon is more than 1 level stronger than a titan dragon. Especially in terms of combat power, it is infinitely close to the war dragon race, which was born for battle. And it is easier for a bloodthirsty demon dragon to level up. As long as it keeps killing, it can increase its level and combat power. Mo-Shi frowned slightly. Do I have to walk the path of bloodthirsty killing? Chapter 403. The system continued to explain to Mo-Shi. The advantage of the bloodthirsty demon dragon is its strong combat power and easy evolution. However, the downside was also obvious. Once he became a bloodthirsty demon dragon, he would have to kill continuously to level up. It was also because of this that the bloodthirsty demon dragon became the enemy of the entire dragon clan tens of thousands of years ago. The moment the dragon race discovers the bloodthirsty demon dragon, they will do their best to kill it. That's why, unless absolutely necessary, it's best not to reveal your bloodthirsty demon dragon form in front of the dragons. When Mo-Shi heard this, he was filled with stubbornness. If that was the case, so what if he became the enemy of the entire dragon clan? If it was in the past, Mo-Shi would have thought to lay low for a while and develop. No one would dare to do anything to him after he was fully developed. But now, perhaps due to the continuous killings in the past few months, his state of mind was affected. Therefore, his idea was to kill whoever dared to provoke him. So what if he was from the dragon race? At this moment, the expressions of the surrounding vampires and werewolves changed drastically when they saw Mo-Shi transform into such a gigantic dragon. Although this giant dragon was not as large as the 1,000-meter-long monster that had appeared before, it was still very powerful. However, this dragon was brimming with murderous intent. A pair of blood-red eyes released a chilling murderous intent. It seemed that it was only interested in one thing: killing. These vampires and werewolves were barely able to muster enough energy to fight against the 1,000-meter-long monster. But in the face of this terrifying dragon, they didn't have the slightest intention to fight. Their only thought was to escape. Mo-Shi spread his wings and roared into the sky. A dragon roar filled with killing intent came from his mouth. Ayo, roar, with a long howl, all the beasts were frightened. Within a radius of 100 kilometers, all living beings were trembling in fear. Mo-Shi stomped on the ground with his hind claws. The ground beneath his feet instantly cracked. With a flap of his wings, he leaped into the air. A pair of giant wings that were nearly 100 meters wide spread out. The pair of giant wings were not in perfect condition. Instead, there were holes of various sizes on them. This was the symbol of the bloodthirsty demon dragon. Ordinary dragons had strong self-healing abilities, so after their wings were injured, they would recover very quickly. However, due to the bloodthirsty demon dragon's excessive thirst for blood, certain aspects of their bodies were lacking. As a result, their wings were usually tattered and tattered. It was like a tattered bedsheet. However, this did not affect their ability to fly at all. Mo-Shi soared 10,000 meters into the sky. It made a circle in the sky, flying up and down, left and right. He was getting used to his body and his wings. When the bloodthirsty demon dragon was flying, it had two forms. One was in the normal state, where he could reach a speed of more than 300 meters per second. The other was to use energy to assist flight, which could reach up to 10,000 meters per second. Mo sure tried to switch between the two states, constantly changing his flying posture in the sky. Perhaps it was because the advancement of this major realm was different from what the system had planned. It was equivalent to not completing the mission given by the system, so there was no system reward. However, this body alone was much better than any other reward. On the ground, all the vampires and werewolves who were still trembling just now took advantage of the fact that this giant dragon was not paying attention to them and hurriedly fled in all directions. After Mo sure adapted to this body, he turned around and dived toward the ground. There were over 1 million vampires and werewolves gathered on the ground before. Now, it was not so easy for them to escape in a short period of time. Mo sure's flying speed in his normal state was 300 meters per second. However, when he dived, he was already infinitely close to the speed of sound. How could the werewolves and vampires on the ground escape? Mo sure swooped down as if covering the sky and the sun. His two hind claws scratched the ground. Dozens of vampires and werewolves were instantly clawed into meat paste by his claws. Screams of terror rang out in the surroundings. Then, Mo sure flapped his wings again. In their panic, the vampires quickly spread their demon wings and fled in all directions. Mo sure let out a dragon roar and opened his cave-like mouth. Boom! The scorching red flame dragon's breath shot out. Suddenly, a large area of the sky seemed to be reflected in a fiery red color. Within a radius of 1,000 meters, all the vampires who were fleeing were swallowed by the sea of fire. Then, they screamed and fell from the sky. After they landed, they kept rolling in the fire, trying to extinguish the flames on their bodies. However, the red flame dragon's breath was not an ordinary flame. Not to mention rolling, even if you poured water on it, it would not be able to extinguish it in a short period of time. As a result, hundreds of vampires died just like that amidst the screams. At the same time, a number appeared in Mo sure's mind: frowny face kill points, 1100. It seemed that killing these level 10 werewolves and level 10 evolved vampires did not bring him many kill points. Mo sure dived a few more times, and the red flame dragon's breath continued to shoot out. The area within a radius of dozens of square kilometers became a sea of fire. In this sea of fire, screams and cries could be heard continuously. In the end, apart from a few vampires and werewolves who managed to escape, the 1 million vampires and werewolves here were all exterminated by Mo sure. A first-grade bloodthirsty demon dragon's combat power was probably comparable to a level 1 Grand Desolate Master. Most importantly, when the bloodthirsty demon dragon released its dragon's might, the low-level creatures below didn't even have the thought of running away. They could only watch as this terrifying dragon descended from the sky. However, even though he was constantly killing, Mo sure did not only have the thought of killing in his mind like before. His mind was still very clear. He constantly reminded himself that he could not fall into the same state as before. This was also a unique characteristic of the bloodthirsty demon dragon. Bloodthirsty demon dragons seemed to only know how to kill, but their minds were always clear. In this way, Mo sure would no longer be on the verge of going insane like before. In the end, after exterminating these 1 million vampires and werewolves, Mo sure's kill points finally reached 100. He had also successfully advanced to a second-grade bloodthirsty demon dragon. At the same time, he discovered that his hunting level had also risen to a level 2 Desolate Master. Mo sure couldn't help but feel a little happy. It seemed that the bloodthirsty demon dragon's level was related to the Desolate Master. When the bloodthirsty demon dragon leveled up, the Desolate Master's level would also increase. However, he did not know whether the bloodthirsty demon dragon's level would also increase if the Desolate Master's level increased. However, now that he had advanced to level 2, killing these vampires and werewolves would not give him many kill points. Moreover, if Mo sure remembered correctly, it was almost time to go to the ancient dragon battlefield. There were no other restrictions on going to the ancient dragon battlefield apart from being a level 1 desolate master. However, the ancient dragon battlefield had a low tide every 10 years. It was safest to go during the low tide. Although Mosher had now advanced to a bloodthirsty demon dragon, he had never been to the ancient dragon battlefield and did not know much about it. Therefore, it was better to go during the low tide. Chapter 404. After Mosher became a bloodthirsty demon dragon, one of his skills had also been upgraded. The blood dragon's eye had been upgraded to the demon dragon's eye. In addition to all the previous abilities of the blood dragon's eye, the demon dragon's eye also had another ability, a special deterrent to infected creatures. When Mosher activated the blood dragon's eye, the werewolves and blood breeds would not dare to move as long as he glanced at them. They would also obey Mosher's orders. This was the new ability of the blood demon's eye. Next, Mosher's body quickly shrank with a thought. The scales, giant wings, long tail, and sharp claws on his body all disappeared. He returned to his human form. However, when he transformed into his dragon form, the clothes on his body were torn apart, and he was now naked. Fortunately, there was no one around. He had to take out another set of clothes from the miniature world and put it on. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. Transforming into a dragon was powerful, but it was a bit of a waste of clothes. Then, he went to the coordinates. Half an hour later, he had returned to the teleportation hall of the 10th hunting island. As soon as he appeared, 2 hunters from hunting island number 10 said to Mosher, "Brother Mosher, you're the leader of this hunting island." "Sir, according to the rules, each ticket can only stay on the 10th hunting island for 2 months. You've stayed on the 10th hunting island for 5 months and 3 days. If you exceed 2 months, you'll have to pay 10 times the amount. If you exceed 63 days, you'll have to pay 80,000 per day. After deducting the change, you'll have to pay 5 million. After Mosher became a bloodthirsty demon dragon, his vision had broadened a lot. His vision had far exceeded the flaming beginning continent. He was going to become an immemorial demon dragon in the future. Naturally, he would not care about such a small amount of money. Although the 10th hunting island was a bit too shady, they had already told him about it before going to the Blood Wolf Star, so it was not too bad. Most importantly, Mosher did not lack money. He nodded. "I'll pay now." The 2 hunters were stunned and looked at Mosher carefully. They thought that they would scare this guy when they said 5 million. They did not expect this guy to be so straightforward. It seemed that he was another rich young master. Thinking of this, a smile appeared on their faces. He hurriedly gestured towards Mosher, "Young master, this way please." One of them took Mosher to pay the bill while the other went to get the manager. In the face of such a rich young master, he had to inform the manager. Soon, the manager also walked over quickly. With a face full of smiles, he said, "Young master, I am the manager of the 10th hunting ground. My surname is Ma. You can call me Xiao Ma. I'm sorry, but we have rules on Hunting Island 10, and we have to follow them. But we're all humans, and we have to be humane. Therefore, I can give you a 20% discount. Just give me 4 million. Mosher did not stand on ceremony and paid 4 million yuan directly. Then, he walked away with a smile on the manager's face. This was the benefit of being rich. If he didn't have the money, Mosher would probably have forced him to leave. With Mosher's strength, no one would be able to stop him if he wanted to leave. However, there would be a lot of trouble. Now that he paid directly, not only would it save him a lot of trouble, but this guy would also have to flatter him with a face full of smiles. Although Mosher did not think that his words were true, everyone liked to hear good words. After all, it was good to be in a good mood. After leaving Hunting Island 10, Mosher returned to Hunting Island 1. Only then did he take Emma and her son out of Micro World. When the people on Hunting Island 1 saw Mosher, they could not help but feel a little surprised. Because at this moment, Mosher seemed to have the faint domineering aura of a king. When they saw Mo Shi, they could not help but have the urge to worship him. Happy also came out to welcome him. For the past 5 months, she had been missing Mo Shi all the time. She missed him so much that she could not eat or sleep. She seemed to have lost a lot of weight. When she saw Mo Shi, she no longer cared about being reserved. She quickly stepped forward and threw herself into Mo Shi's arms. Leaning against Mo Shi's broad and warm chest, she could no longer hold back the tears in her eyes. They flowed down her cheeks and wet the clothes on Mo Shi's chest. She hugged Mo Shi tightly as if she was afraid that Mo Shi would leave again. Mo Shi also hugged Happy tightly. This time, he had been very busy during the 5 months he was away. However, as long as he was free, Happy's figure and her smile would appear in his mind uncontrollably. Moreover, if he had Happy by his side, he would not have fallen into the endless slaughter so easily. When he felt Happy's heartbeat, he finally spoke. "From now on, I'll take you wherever Brother Mo goes." When Happy heard that, tears blurred her eyes once again. She nodded heavily. When the people around them saw that, they quietly dispersed. They left the time for Mo Shi and Happy. There was no specific time for the opening of the ancient dragon battlefield, only a general area. Therefore, Mo Shi did not need to be too anxious. He stayed on Hunting Island No. 1 for a while longer. After evolving into a bloodthirsty demon dragon, he could completely control his state of mind and would not go berserk again. However, after 5 months of continuous slaughter, he needed some time to calm down. Otherwise, it would not be a good thing if his murderous aura was too strong. It might even endanger the people around him. Therefore, he stayed on Hunting Island No. 1 for a whole month. During this month, he did not think or do anything. Every day, he just accompanied Happy, watched the sunrise and sunset, listened to the wind, and listened to the sound of the sea. In such peaceful days, Mo Shi's state of mind gradually calmed down. The murderous aura in his body also lessened by a lot. At the same time, the Heavenly Gold sect, which was ranked first in the 16 prefectures of Serene Cloud. The Great Elder's most talented disciple had been on Hunting Island No. 10 for 5 months. In fact, in the 3rd month, they had already sent people to the Blood Wolf Star to cause chaos. The blood breeds and the werewolves were fighting. They thought that the disciple might have died in the war between the werewolves and the blood breeds. No one could be blamed for this. Therefore, the matter came to an end. However, there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. There was a rich young master who stayed on Hunting Island No. 10 for 5 months. After he returned, the news that he had paid a few million slowly spread. At the same time, Mo Shi planned to go to the ancient dragon battlefield after staying on Hunting Island No. 1 for a month. To go to the ancient dragon battlefield, a wormhole teleportation device was required. Mo Shi had already obtained this teleportation device a long time ago. Right now, he only needed to activate it. Of course, this time, he brought Happy with him. The two of them turned into bluish-white balls of light and disappeared from Hunting Island No. 1. When they reappeared, the scene in front of them had changed. There was an undulating mountain range here. Mo Shi used Dragon's Will to investigate. Within a radius of more than 300 kilometers, there were mountains of all sizes. Chapter 405. Mo Shi used his Dragon's Will to investigate. Within a radius of hundreds of kilometers, there were mountains of all sizes. However, it was a little different from what Mo Shi had imagined. In his imagination, the ancient dragon battlefield should be dilapidated, gloomy, and cold. But here, it was spring, flowers were blooming, and orioles were singing and swallows were dancing. It was a scene full of vitality. Seeing such a scene, Happy was naturally in a good mood. Mo Shi was happy to see Happy, and he was also very happy. Mo Shi took out the map of the ancient dragon battlefield and found that this was only the edge of the ancient dragon battlefield. The real ancient battlefield was still more than 300,000 kilometers to the west. He was not in a hurry to travel. He flapped his wings and flew forward slowly with Happy. He flew through the mountains full of wildflowers as if he was wandering in a painting. After flying for half a day, Mosher saw that the sky was about to turn dark. He said in his mind, "System, sign in." Since he had come to the ancient dragon battlefield, Missouri sure did not want to go back in a short time. He wanted to go to every corner of the ancient dragon battlefield and sign in here. The system's voice immediately sounded in his mind, frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in location, periphery of the ancient dragon battlefield, 100,000 mountains. Sign in reward, 10 strands of dragon's will. 10 strands of dragon's will for each sign in was not bad. Although it was a little less, this was only the periphery of the ancient dragon battlefield. The closer he got to the center of the ancient dragon battlefield, the more good things he would get. Gradually, the sun slowly set in the west. Mosher planned to have dinner with Happy and rest on the spot. With Happy out this time, Mosher did not have to bring any dry food. He only brought ingredients. Wouldn't it be better to let Happy cook? Mosher took out the ingredients, and Happy began to get busy. Mosher helped Happy by the side. But at this moment, a figure appeared more than 300 meters to the west of them. This figure looked a little like a deer, but it had a pair of small dragon-like wings. It could not fly, but it could jump very high. Mosher could not recognize what kind of creature it was. However, he could detect that this creature had dragon's will. That's right, it wasn't psychokinesis or spiritual sense, but dragon sense. The creature hopped towards Mosher and the others. At the same time, the dragon will in its body spread out and headed straight for Mosher. Mosher checked its draconic sense and found that it had already reached level 3. It was only a level 3 dragon psyche, yet it wanted to attack Mosher. This was not something that Mosher would take seriously. His draconic will immediately counterattacked and enveloped the creature. In the blink of an eye, the dragon will of this creature was devoured. The creature's body instantly shriveled up. After a while, it turned into a dried corpse. A system notification popped up in Mosher's mind. Devoured level 3 dragon psyche, obtained 3 strands of dragon psyche. Dragon psyche, 13100000. Devouring this fellow's dragon will would allow Mosher to obtain 3 strands of dragon will. That made Mosher delighted. If there were more of these creatures, wouldn't his dragon will level up again? Just as he was thinking about this, another creature appeared more than 500 meters away. This creature also had a level 3 dragon will. However, it didn't look like the previous creature. Instead, it looked more like a walking tree. The tree was more than 10 meters tall, its branches swaying constantly as it shuttled through the forest. Although it didn't have eyes, its huge body didn't touch any other branches when it shuttled through the forest. It was very strange. At the same time, its dragon will also attacked Mosher. However, it was almost instantly devoured by Mosher. The body of the tree was also shrinking rapidly. After a while, it turned into a dried-up tree stump that was only about 3 meters tall. Another system notification popped up in Mosher's mind. Level 3 Draconic Sense devoured. Mosher has 3 strands of Draconic Sense. Draconic Sense 16100000. Following that, Mosher devoured a few ladybug monsters, a few monsters that looked like wildflowers, and even a rock monster. In short, these monsters came in all shapes and sizes. Mosher plundered the memories of these monsters and looked carefully. He found that these monsters' memories were very messy. Many of the monsters' memories were just simple scenes. However, Mosher had plundered many of these monsters' memories and finally understood why there were so many of these strange monsters. It turned out that on the ancient dragon battlefield, the Long Nian or Long Nian who died among the dragons would slowly disintegrate with the passage of time if they didn't have any special obsession. They would disintegrate into countless fragments. These fragments of draconic sense would unconsciously attach themselves to various other things. In the end, these things attached to the fragments of draconic sense would become all kinds of monsters. Most people thought that the ancient dragon battlefield was very dangerous. Even the periphery was very dangerous because they couldn't deal with these monsters. These monsters were not afraid of energy attacks or physical attacks. Only mental attacks could restrain them. However, their telekinesis was too strong. Those psychic masters would also have their telekinesis stolen under their mental attacks. Just this point alone was enough to scare off many people. Only those who were close to level 10 desolate hunters dared to wander around the ancient dragon battlefield at night. Those who only had the strength of a level 1 desolate hunter could only find a place to hide at night as soon as possible. Furthermore, if something went wrong and they were discovered, they would be killed by these monsters. Therefore, most level 1 desolate hunters didn't dare to enter the ancient dragon battlefield. In just one night, more than 300 level 3 monsters had appeared. This also made Mo Shi's draconic sense reach more than 900. As these monsters were still some distance away, Mo Shi killed them. Therefore, he didn't know that the forest was so dangerous at night. The next morning, they continued to fly west. It took them more than 5 days to reach the real entrance of the ancient dragon battlefield. At this time, Mo Shi's draconic sense had reached more than 4,700. The real entrance of the ancient dragon battlefield was guarded by Heavenly Gold sect disciples. These Heavenly Gold sect disciples were all level 5 desolate hunters. They guarded the entrance so that only Heavenly Gold sect disciples or those who were related to the Heavenly Gold sect could enter. At this time, they were discussing something. "Hey, have you heard? Senior Bufan might not have been killed by the Blood Clan or the werewolves, but by someone from the Flaming Continent. Someone from the same batch as him who entered the 10th hunting ground. That's impossible. Who would be so bold as to kill a disciple of the Heavenly Gold sect? Even in the entire Flaming Continent, there aren't many forces who would dare to kill an important disciple of the Heavenly Gold sect." Another disciple shook his head. "There are always exceptions. According to the information I received," at this point, the disciple paused. The other disciples were intrigued and asked anxiously, "Tell me. Why don't you tell me?" The disciple shook his head. "It's useless. The cliff cutter dog won't show mercy." Chapter 406. The Sky Gold sect disciples were discussing among themselves. "You said that someone dared to kill senior brother Bufan. Is that true?" "Of course it's true. Initially, everyone thought that they were killed by the Blood Clan and werewolves from the 10th hunting ground. However, a month ago, a fellow who went to the 10th hunting ground at the same time as senior brother Bufan actually returned from the 10th hunting ground after disappearing for 5 months. Our sect's Grand Elder has already gone to the 10th hunting ground to get information on that guy and check if he's suspected of harming senior brother Bufan." When the others heard this, they all came to a sudden realization. "I knew it. Senior brother Bufan is a level 10 hunter and has a level 10 psychic master by his side. Moreover, he has many life-saving trump cards. How could he be killed by the Blood Clan and werewolves? If they really find out, that guy is dead. Not just him. Even his sect and family won't be able to escape. After all, senior brother Bufan is the Grand Elder's most valued disciple. Senior brother Bufan is the Grand Elder's most valued disciple. Even if an ordinary Sky Gold sect disciple was killed, we won't let the murderer off." If it was in the past, Mo Shi would be worried when he heard these people's discussions. But now, when Mo Shi heard their discussion, he was actually looking forward to it. He was surprised. What was he looking forward to? Was he looking forward to a big fight with the Sky Gold sect after they found out that he was the culprit? After a while, he found the reason for his anticipation. He was looking forward to only one thing: killing. There were hundreds of thousands of Sky Gold sect disciples. Among them, there were also thousands of disciples who were desolate hunters. He should be looking forward to killing these Sky Gold sect disciples. This should be the change in his personality after evolving into the bloodthirsty demon dragon. The bloodthirsty demon dragon's first thought when encountering any trouble was to kill. Killing to solve any problem was the bloodthirsty demon dragon's code of conduct. Although Mo Shi wasn't a real bloodthirsty demon dragon, he had more of a human nature. However, he still couldn't help but think of killing when encountering problems. It was just that Mo Shi had more of a human's rationality. Liking to kill was one thing, but being able to kill at this stage was another. Before they found out that it was him, he had to develop first. It wouldn't be too late to fight and kill when they found out that he was the one who did it. As he thought about it, Mo Shi brought him to the entrance. The Heavenly Gold Sect disciples all turned their heads when they saw someone approaching. Their first glance was, of course, directed at the woman. There was nothing strange about this. Any man who saw a man and a woman walking over at the same time would immediately pay attention to the woman. This is the nature of man as an animal. Of course, she could not rule out the fact that some men just like to look at other men. The Heavenly Gold Sect disciples' eyes lit up when they saw Happy. He couldn't help but take a few more glances. This girl was very beautiful, but she wasn't like those goddesses that made people flinch. She wanted to be the opposite, but she was like the sister next door, giving people a sense of closeness. Compared to this girl, the so-called beauties of the Heavenly Gold Sect paled in comparison. Most importantly, however, the Heavenly Gold Sect prided itself on being a righteous sect. Therefore, they were very strict with their disciples, at least on the surface. Therefore, they only took a few more glances and didn't have any other thoughts. Then, they looked at Mo Shi. They were mostly surprised by Mo Shi and Happy's actions. Behind them was the main entrance to the ancient dragon battlefield. Only those who were desolate hunters and above could enter. Could it be that these two people had become desolate hunters at such a young age? If that was the case, wouldn't this person be very talented? At this time, Mo Shi was also secretly sizing up these people. In fact, he wasn't really sizing them up. Instead, he was sizing up the Heavenly Gold Sect that they represented. He wanted to see what the Heavenly Gold Sect was like from these people. Actually, the ancient dragon battlefield was discovered by the old senior from Yuzhou more than 500 years ago. Then, he set up a seal on the ancient dragon battlefield. Only those who were desolate hunters and above could enter. After that, he didn't hide anything. Instead, he announced the location of the ancient dragon battlefield and the method to enter. He also created some teleportation devices to the ancient dragon battlefield. It could be said that the old senior was absolutely selfless. However, as more and more people came to the ancient dragon battlefield was gradually occupied by the Heavenly Gold Sect. Not only did the Heavenly Gold Sect occupy the ancient dragon battlefield, but they also didn't allow people from other sects to enter. They treated the entire ancient dragon battlefield as their private property. Moreover, they even came up with a dignified reason. Many naive cultivators really thought that the Heavenly Gold Sect was thinking about the cultivators of the 16 prefectures and didn't allow others to enter. However, anyone with a discerning eye knew that the Heavenly Gold Sect was occupying the ancient dragon battlefield for themselves. As Mo Shi thought of this, he had already arrived in front of the Heavenly Gold Sect disciples. The Heavenly Gold Sect disciples stretched out their hands to stop Mo Shi. The Heavenly Gold Sect has already said that no one is allowed to enter the ancient dragon battlefield without permission. Don't you know? Mo Shi sneered and was about to retaliate. However, at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the distant sky. His speed was so fast that it exceeded Mo Shi's imagination. He was just at the horizon a moment ago, but in the blink of an eye, he was already in front of him. He wasn't using flying hover shoes, but was standing on a 5-meter-long, extremely high-tech giant sword. When he landed, the temperature within a few kilometers seemed to have dropped by more than 10 degrees. Mo Shi didn't even need to see his face to know who he was. Han Jianxing, who froze the 16 prefectures with a single sword. In the entire 16 prefectures, he was probably the only one who used such a giant sword as a flying machine. The Heavenly Gold Sect disciples naturally knew about Han Jianxing's reputation. They couldn't possibly not recognize Han Jianxing's giant sword. They hurriedly cupped their fists and bowed to Han Jianxing. Senior Han. Even though they were the number one sect in the 16 prefectures, they didn't dare to rashly offend Han Jianxing. Although their sect also had great desolate hunters in charge. However, the reputation of freezing the 16 prefectures with a single sword wasn't to be taken lightly. Back when Han Jianxing had destroyed the 17 sects, there had been a total of 32 great desolate hunters in those sections. In the end, they had all been wiped out by Han Jianxing. Therefore, in the 16 prefectures, the upper echelons of every sect would warn their disciples that they could offend anyone except Han Jianxing. Han Jianxing ignored the Heavenly Gold sect disciples. Instead, he turned his head and glanced at Imo Shi. His mouth, which was covered by his beard, spat out a few words. Level 2 Desolate Hunter. Chapter 407. Han Jianxing's mustache covered his mouth as he spat out a few words. Level 2 Desolate Hunter. Although he didn't show any emotions on his face, he was still a little surprised. The last time he saw Imo Shi was only a level 5 Desolate Hunter. In just half a year, he had already become a level 2 Desolate Hunter. This speed could be considered heaven-defying. However, Han Jianxing was just a little surprised. He was also a prodigy and had seen all sorts of situations. Before his wife was killed, he was also a monster who could rise several levels in a year. However, after taking revenge for his wife, he didn't have the heart to continue cultivating. Therefore, his strength had been stagnant all these years. However, even if he didn't cultivate much, his strength had slowly risen from a level 1 Great Desolate Hunter to a level 2 Great Desolate Hunter. Many people couldn't reach the level of a Great Desolate Hunter even if they worked hard for their whole lives. Many Great Desolate Hunters didn't cultivate much, but they could rise by one level in 10 years. This showed the importance of talent. If he worked harder, he would probably be a level 7 or 8 Great Desolate Hunter. In another 10 years, he would be at the top of the continent. However, this wasn't what he wanted. Imo Shi nodded to Han Jianxing. Yes. I just advanced. Han Jianxing nodded slightly. Ignoring Imo Shi, he turned around and entered the ancient dragon battlefield. Stepping on his giant sword, he quickly disappeared from the ancient dragon battlefield. After Han Jianxing was completely gone, the Heavenly Gold sect disciples turned around and looked at Imo Shi. However, when they looked at Imo Shi, their attitudes had undergone a 180-degree change. Little brother, you know Senior Han? Imo Shi nodded, yes. The Heavenly Gold sect disciples looked at each other and cupped their hands to Imo Shi. Little brother, sorry about just now. If we knew you knew Senior Han, we wouldn't have stopped you. If you want to go to the ancient dragon battlefield, you can go anytime. Imo Shi sneered in his heart. These so-called righteous sects bullied the weak and feared the strong, and curried favor with those in power. However, he couldn't be bothered to care about this now. With Happy in tow, he walked straight into the great dragon's ancient battlefield. Behind him, the Heavenly Gold sect disciples continued to speak. Little brother, it's very dangerous inside. You must be careful. Especially the north. You can't go there. Imo Shi's heart skipped a beat. He had seen the map of the ancient dragon battlefield before. Almost every place in the entire ancient dragon battlefield was clearly marked on the map. There were also signs indicating what dangers there might be. However, there was only the north side. There was no topography drawn, nor was there any indication of the dangers there. There were only 4 words written on it, not confirmed yet. It seemed that there was indeed something in the north. Imo Shi had already plundered the memories of the Heavenly Gold sect disciples. However, the disciples of the Heavenly Gold sect could not recall what was in the north. Obviously, they didn't know either. Imo Shi could only stay away from the north for the time being. According to the map, the ancient dragon battlefield was divided into 5 zones according to the danger level. Zone 1 was the least dangerous zone, while Zone 5 was the most dangerous zone. The area of the 5th district was the entire northern region. Based on Imo Shi's character in the past, he would definitely go to Zone 1, which was the least dangerous zone. But now that Mo had evolved into a bloodthirsty demonic dragon, he wasn't as cautious as before. Hence, he was more adventurous. He even looked forward to the adventure. Hence, he did not go to Zone 1, which was the least dangerous zone. Instead, he went straight to Zone 2, which was the closest to him. According to the map, Zone 2 should be one of the battlefields during the Great Ancient Dragon War. Since it was more dangerous here, Mo let Happy enter the micro-world first. Then, he flapped his wings and arrived at Zone 2. It was the ruins of a huge city. It could be vaguely seen that this city used to be extremely large. It probably occupied an area of hundreds of square kilometers. Moreover, the buildings in the city were all tall and large. Obviously, this was not a city for humans to live in. Mo guessed that it might have been built by the ancient dragon race to live in the city. However, this huge city was completely destroyed during the war. Now, only ruins were left, and green vines were crawling all over them. On the surface, there was nothing here other than broken boulders, collapsed stone pillars, and collapsed stone walls. However, over the past few hundred years, many people had obtained useful things from the ancient dragon battlefield. For example, dragon scales that could be used to forge armor. Dragon teeth and dragon claws that could be used to forge weapons. There were even people who obtained sealed dragon blood and used it to modify their bloodline, increasing their realm and combat strength in an extremely short period of time. Mo's dragons will spread out and carefully investigated the area with a radius of 350 kilometers. However, he did not find anything. Mo was not discouraged at all. What he cared about was not these things. As long as he came here to sign in, he would be able to obtain a lot of good things. System, sign in. In his mind, the system's voice immediately replied frowny face sign in successful. Sign in location, Ancient Dragon Battlefield Zone 2, sign in reward, Dragon Slaying Saber. Pfft, Mo almost spat out. Even the Dragon Slaying Saber came out? System, do you want to give me another heavenly sword? However, speaking of the Dragon Slaying Saber, Mo's mind immediately conjured up a scene of him wearing a set of dazzling armor, carrying a dazzling golden saber on his shoulder, and a pair of incomparably gorgeous wings on his back. At the same time, there was a hidden message: as soon as you go online, you will be given a dragon slaying saber. 1/ for 99999999999, and each slash will drop a piece of top-grade equipment. Mo couldn't help but smile. Then, he checked the system backpack. Then, he saw a saber. However, this saber was not golden or shiny. It looked like an ordinary saber. There were no decorations or patterns. Even the handle of the saber was wrapped in black cloth. It felt like the pig slaughtering knife that Mo had seen in the village when he was young. However, this saber had one characteristic, and that was that it was big. The saber was more than 2 meters long. It was about a foot wide. If it was an ordinary person, it would probably be difficult for them to pick it up. Using such a saber, it was naturally impossible to have an infinite number of slashes and drop godly equipment with each slash. On the saber, there were the attributes of this saber: frowny-faced dragon-slaying saber, forged by the cold body of the demon's den, soaked in the egg liquid of the dragon-devouring worm. It can cause huge damage to the body of the dragon race, the energy body of the dragon race, and the soul of the dragon race. Mo looked at these 2 lines of words and was secretly surprised. Not only could this dragon-slaying saber hurt the body of the dragon race, but it could also cause huge damage to the energy body of the dragon race and the soul of the dragon race. This was awesome. Chapter 408. The dragon-slaying saber was awesome, but Mo felt that things were developing in a strange direction. He was a dragon, but the system gave him a dragon-slaying saber. Did he have to kill himself? Forget it, he would keep the dragon-slaying saber first. Then, Mo continued to fly forward. During the day, there seemed to be nothing in the ancient dragon battlefield other than the ruins of the ancient city and the green vines. However, Mo sure guessed that there might be monsters like the ones in the forest outside at night. After searching for more than half an hour, Mo sure finally found a few people. They should be from the Skygold sect, Skywood sect, and Heavenly Water sect. Although the Skygold sect occupied the ancient dragon battlefield, the Skywood sect and Heavenly Water sect were from the same sect as the Skygold sect. Therefore, the disciples of these two sects could enter and leave the ancient dragon battlefield as they wished. At this moment, the disciples of the three sects were walking and stopping. They looked around from time to time or used their dragon psyche to investigate. They seemed to be looking for something. Mo sure casually plundered the memories of a few of them and quickly understood what was going on. These people were looking for a wild beast called the spirit-engulfing beast. The spirit-engulfing beast loved to devour souls that were already dead but had yet to dissipate their psyche. The disciples of the three sects found a cave in the second zone. Using their psyche, they discovered that there might be some good things left behind by the ancient dragon era. However, there were also powerful dragon spirits inside, which were the souls of the dragon clan guarding it. There was a level 2 spiritual psyche master with them. However, the spiritual psyche master's psyche was slightly weaker than the dragon spirits. Therefore, they seemed to be looking for the spirit-engulfing beast to suppress the dragon spirits. Therefore, they planned to capture a spirit-engulfing beast to deal with the dragon spirits in the cave. Mo sure had planned to go to the cave directly to look for the dragon spirits. If he devoured the dragon spirits, his spiritual psyche would increase again. However, he also wanted to see what the spirit-engulfing beast was. Therefore, he stopped and waited for the spirit-engulfing beast to appear. About 5 hours later, one of the spiritualists suddenly whispered, "The soul-devouring beasts have appeared. Everyone, hide." The rest of them were hiding in the surrounding ruins. A moment later, a small thing about 30 centimeters long appeared. When Mo sure saw this little thing, he was speechless. What the hell was this spirit-devouring beast? Wasn't it just a cat? It was a cat covered in black fur. From head to toe, there wasn't a single strand of stray hair. Under the sunlight, its black fur exuded a black luster, like black brocade. It looked around for a moment, then continued to jump forward. Its speed didn't seem to be fast, no different from an ordinary stray cat. Mo sure activated the blood dragon's eye and looked over. Species, spirit-devouring beast, level 1 mutated dire beast, ability, devour spirit bodies, extremely effective against spirit bodies. It was indeed a spirit-devouring beast. This was very different from what Mo sure had imagined. At this moment, the spirit-engulfing beast didn't seem to know that there was danger nearby. It was like a lazy cat that had just eaten and was about to go bask in the sun. Step by step, it slowly approached. Just as it entered the encirclement, the Heavenly Gold sect disciples pounced at it at the same time. Each of them threw a large net at the spirit-engulfing beast. However, at this moment, the spirit-engulfing beast suddenly rolled to the side like a lazy donkey. It dodged the attacks of the few people. Then, it suddenly turned around and dug up a handful of sand with its back claws. The few people behind it were about to chase after it, but they were stopped by the sand. They all cursed, "What a cunning beast." As they spoke, they continued to chase after the spirit-engulfing beast. The spirit-engulfing beast leaped past another level 5 desolate hunter and extended its right claw. Whoosh! It left 3 deep claw marks on the level 5 desolate hunter's face. Each mark was so deep that bone could be seen. Then, the spirit-engulfing beast turned into a black shadow and leaped away. It was a stark contrast to its lazy behavior just now. Mo sure couldn't help but be surprised by the spirit-engulfing beast's reaction speed. This little thing looked like a cat, but its reaction speed was much faster than a cat's. The few people who had surrounded it were all level 5 desolate hunters. However, the spirit-engulfing beast had managed to escape. The desolate hunter whose claw was scratched covered the deep wound on his face and wiped the blood off his face. He was furious and cursed, "Damn it, I'm going to kill you." As he spoke, he condensed an energy weapon. Whoosh! a thick red and white beam of light shot out from the desolate hunter's energy weapon. Boom! A huge crater with a diameter of more than 10 meters appeared in front of the spirit-engulfing beast. The spirit-engulfing beast was shocked and quickly fled in another direction. Seeing this, the rest of the people quickly advised, "Are you crazy? We're here to catch it, not kill it. If you kill it, how are we going to go to the catacombs?" The desolate hunter seemed to be an impatient person. He cursed, "I've had enough. If we don't kill it, it's going to kill us all. We've been here for more than 20 days to catch this beast. Even if I kill it today, I won't let it escape." As he spoke, he attacked the spirit-engulfing beast again. Whoosh, boom. A huge crater appeared where the spirit-engulfing beast was. However, the spirit-engulfing beast jumped away again. The desolate hunter seemed to have gone crazy. "Damn it, die." Boom, 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 boom. Beams of energy shot out continuously. Huge craters appeared one after another. The spirit-engulfing beast seemed to have nowhere to run. It could only run forward. It ran a big circle around the desolate hunters. The desolate hunter, on the other hand, used his energy to create a big circle. This large circle of craters was connected together. From the air, it looked like a string of pearls strung together. It was at this moment. Boom, the ground suddenly shook. To be precise, the ground inside the string of pearls was shaking. Then, boom, suddenly, a 20-meter-tall magma pillar spurted out of a large crater. Then, pillars of magma spewed out from the rest of the pits as well. Boom, 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 boom. There were more than 50 lava pillars surrounding the desolate hunters. It was as if there were more than 50 fountains surrounding the desolate hunters. However, these fountains were not spewing water. Instead, they were spewing hot lava pillars. Moreover, the lava pillars were getting thicker with every passing second. At first, it was only about a meter tall. In just 3 seconds, it had grown to more than 5 meters thick. The desolate hunters who were surrounded by the lava pillars were shocked. Chapter 409. The pillars of fire around them shot up dozens of meters high and became thicker and thicker. The scorching hot lava fell to the ground. The hunters' faces changed drastically when they saw this. He hurriedly condensed an energy light shield to block the falling lava. But at that moment, as the pillars of fire grew thicker and thicker, the ground in the center began to shake and collapse. Those people hurriedly tried to fly in all directions. But when they looked up, they saw that the pillars of fire around them had joined together to form a circular wall of fire that completely surrounded them. The ground continued to collapse. Below them was the boiling lava. There was also a large amount of lava falling from above. There was no way for them to escape. Finally, after a series of screams, the ground under their feet completely collapsed. They had already activated their hoverboards. However, the scorching lava that kept falling from the sky kept smashing down on their energy shields. Although the defensive power of their energy shields wasn't bad, under the intense heat, their energy consumption was also extremely fast. Soon, their energy shields became thinner and thinner. Finally, they cracked and shattered. The 4 of them were smashed into the lava below by the lava that fell from above their heads. They died without a complete corpse. Not even a speck of dust remained. After doing all this, the spirit-devouring beast stuck out its tongue and licked its paws. Then, it used its paws to wash its face. Then, it continued to move forward leisurely. Mo Shi was astonished when he saw this. This spirit-devouring beast was really smart. It was only a level 2 mutated dire beast, but it had relied on its understanding of the terrain and its cunning to kill the 4 level 5 hunters. It was rare to see such a smart mutant wild beast. If he could tame this spirit-devouring beast, it might be of use in the future. At that moment, due to the collapse of the ground, the wall of fire was quickly decreasing. Mo Shi checked the spirit-devouring beast's location. He teleported to the front of the spirit-devouring beast. Mo Shi suddenly appeared in front of the spirit-devouring beast. The spirit-devouring beast was shocked. It turned around and tried to escape. Mo Shi immediately used his dragon will to suppress the spirit-devouring beast. The spirit-engulfing beast was instantly immobilized. It looked at Mo Shi, its eyes filled with fear and surprise. Mo Shi reached out to pick up the spirit-engulfing beast. But at that moment, the spirit-devouring beast's claws suddenly shot out. He reached out to grab Mo Shi's hand. Mo Shi was also shocked and quickly retracted his hand. The spirit-engulfing beast took the opportunity to turn around and flee. With a single leap, he was already more than 20 meters away. Mo Shi was a little surprised. The spirit-devouring beast wasn't afraid of his dragon will. Moreover, this guy was too cunning. He clearly wasn't afraid of his dragon will, but he still pretended to be suppressed by it and didn't move at all. When he let down his guard, it suddenly attacked him. Although this fellow's level was low, and his strength was weak. But it was definitely not to be underestimated. At this moment, just as it was about to escape, Mo Shi once again teleported in front of it. But at this moment, he felt the ground beneath his feet become empty. He was actually falling down. It turned out that there was a 5-meter wide pipe under his feet. It was just that it was previously covered by a thick layer of vines. Logically speaking, even if there was nothing at the bottom, Mo Shi should have been able to detect it with his dragon will. But he couldn't detect it. It seemed that this ancient dragon battlefield was indeed very strange and dangerous. Fortunately, Mo Shi didn't retract his blood dragon wings. He flapped his wings and flew out of the pipe. He floated in the air, looking down at the spirit-engulfing beast that was fleeing on the ground. He wanted to steal its memory and see what it was afraid of. But he realized that he couldn't steal its memory at all. It turned out that this guy was the nemesis of soul and telekinesis. Any telekinesis or soul skills were ineffective against it. Even if Mo Shi's dragon will was 10 times or 100 times stronger, it still wouldn't have any effect on it. Mo Shi frowned slightly. Could it be that he couldn't even deal with this little thing? Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. In the next moment, the long way on his body suddenly spread out. At the same time, he opened his mouth. He let out a long but domineering dragon roar. This dragon roar wasn't one of Mo Shi's skills, nor was it a sound that Mo Shi imitated. It was a real dragon roar. He had now become a bloodthirsty demonic dragon. Naturally, he could let out a dragon roar. Even if he was in human form, he could still let out a dragon roar without any hindrance. This dragon roar spread over a radius of tens of kilometers. The disciples of the Heavenly Gold sect, Heavenly Wood sect, and Heavenly Water sect were all shocked when they heard this dragon roar. This was the ancient dragon battlefield, and the souls of those giant dragons would often let out dragon roars at night. But this was the first time that a dragon roar had suddenly appeared in broad daylight. Could it be that the souls of those giant dragons could already come out in broad daylight? Below Mo Shi, the spirit-engulfing beast heard this dragon roar and immediately prostrated on the ground subconsciously. In addition, Mo Shi's long way had spread out. The spirit-engulfing beast felt the fear that came from the bottom of its heart and began to tremble. At first, it didn't even dare to raise its head. After a while, it slowly raised its head and looked at Mo Shi. It saw that there was still a human in the sky, not a giant dragon. The spirit-engulfing beast was puzzled. Could it be that it was hallucinating? But then again, it made sense. Giant dragons had been extinct for millions of years. How could a giant dragon appear here again? But the chill that came from the bottom of its heart still made it afraid to run away. At this moment, Mo Shi lowered his altitude. He asked, "Are you willing to submit to me?" Although he wasn't sure if this little guy could speak or if it could understand his words, but with such a high IQ, it should be able to understand. As expected, after Mo Shi finished speaking, the spirit-engulfing beast's eyes rolled a few times. It seemed to hesitate for a moment before it nodded. Then, it lowered its head and prostrated on the ground, as if it was surrendering. However, Mo saw that this guy didn't look very obedient. He immediately warned it. "If you dare to betray me, I have 100 ways to destroy you." As he said that, he waved his right hand. A blast of cold air instantly spread out. It covered a radius of several kilometers. Even the magma that had just appeared on the ground was directly frozen. A thick layer of ice appeared on top of the magma. This was a skill that Mo had acquired a long time ago, the Black Ice Dragon Breath. But because of the lack of energy in his body, he had never used it. Now that he had transformed into a bloodthirsty demon dragon, the energy in his body was much more abundant than that of an ordinary desolate hunter. That was why he dared to use it. When he was in his dragon form, he directly breathed out cold air from his mouth. When he was in his human form, he released cold air from his hands. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.